I was standing in the middle of a narrow alley in the rain, pretending to be nothing but a fat, clumsy butcher shaking in his boots. This scarred thug, they called him Red Staff, was walking straight at me, dragging his big knife. He wanted to get past me to finish off Zhou Tong, who was lying in a heap of garbage behind me. I was just an obstacle to him, a fat blob in his way. I played it up real good. I held my dull, old cleaver with trembling hands, eyes wide open, begging him to spare me. "Please, sir, I'm just a pig butcher." He laughed and told me I should be reborn as a pig next life. He didn't even bother putting up his guard, just raised his huge blade and swung it straight down at my head. That was his last mistake. Right before the blade hit me, I ducked. I made it look like I slipped on a puddle and fell sideways. His knife missed my ear by a hair and slammed into the mud. Before he could pull it out, I grabbed his wrist with my left hand and drove my right fist up from my waist straight into his unguarded chest. One clean hit, my best technique, the ground-to-sky cannon from the 8 Extreme style. I put everything I had into that punch. His ribs caved in. I felt them snap under my fist. He was dead before he hit the ground, blood pouring from his mouth. The whole thing took maybe 2 seconds. Then I went right back to acting. I screamed, rolled away from the body like I was terrified, threw my cleaver, and huddled against the wall, yelling about how heaven must have struck him down for his sins. Zhou Tong bought it completely. From where he was lying, he couldn't see what really happened. He figured the thug just dropped dead from some kind of internal energy backfire. Bad luck for the bad guy, good luck for us. And when I went over to help Zhou Tong up, I tripped and fell right on top of the body. In those 2 seconds, hidden under my big loose smock, my hands found the dead man's secret pockets. A heavy bag of coins and a thin booklet wrapped in oiled paper. Both slipped right into the hidden lining of my shirt. I got up, wiped my hands on the dead man's clothes like I was disgusted, and helped Zhou Tong to his feet. He was so grateful he promised to reward me when we got back. He even grabbed my arm like I was his lifeline. I just kept my head down and smiled my dumb, harmless smile. Nobody noticed the heavy little package tucked inside my shirt. Right when the fighting on the main street was at its worst, the city guards' gongs rang out from both ends. That sound was like a bucket of cold water on everyone. Both sides, our 8 Extreme sect and the Blood River gang, stopped fighting instantly and pulled apart. That's how things work in Yunzhou. The gangs fight, the government looks the other way. But when the gongs sound, it means the officials upstairs have decided the show's over. Anyone still swinging a blade after that is basically asking to be crushed by the city's heavy infantry the next morning. Both sides threw out some tough talk, then grabbed their wounded and left. The dead? They stay where they fell. The city guards would come later to cart the bodies off to a mass grave and help themselves to whatever coins and weapons they found on the corpses. That's their unofficial bonus. Meanwhile, back in the dead-end alley, Zhou Tong heard the gongs and got excited. "Quick, help me out. My uncle's people are here." Sure enough, Steward Zhao Gang came rushing in with some elite disciples, looking for Zhou Tong. The kid was supposed to become some elder's personal student. Losing him would mean punishment and dock pay for Zhao Gang. When Zhao Gang spotted the dead body of that scarred thug, he raised his torch and recognized him. Chen Biao? The mad dog from Blood River Gang? He looked surprised. This guy had been tearing through our ranks earlier, cutting down 4 or 5 of our men. Now here he was, chest caved in, dead as a doornail. That was my cue. I jumped out from my corner, covered in mud, shaking all over, and put on the performance of a lifetime. "Sir, this villain chased young master, Zhou, all the way into this alley. But our young master, oh, he's a warrior god reborn. He drew his sword and fought this monster for 300 rounds. Sparks flying, dust everywhere. I was hiding behind the trash and couldn't even see their shadows. In the end, the young master used his deep inner power to drain this villain's energy dry, and the villain's blood flow reversed. His chest just exploded. Young master is the war god of our sect. Everyone stared at me like I'd lost my mind. But here's the thing, it worked. Zhao Gang and his men knew Zhou Tong was only a beginner. But they figured rich family kids carry secret life-saving tricks. They decided Zhou Tong must have used some desperate technique that cost him dearly, but shattered Chen Biao's heart from the inside. And Zhou Tong? The look on his face was priceless. He'd been dreading having to explain how he got swatted into a garbage pile like a fly. Then I handed him the perfect story on a silver platter. He played along beautifully, straightened up, looked at the rain falling at a dramatic angle, and sighed like a tired hero. Brother Wang is too kind. I only did what any man would do for his sect brothers. I just wish my skills were deeper, so I could have captured him alive. How regrettable. They all bought it. Every word. Before they carried Zhou Tong out on a stretcher, he gave me a long look. He's not completely stupid. He knew his clean escape depended on my mouth. More importantly, he needed someone to stick to the blood flow reversal story so nobody would look too closely at the body. So he made me an offer, nice and loud for everyone to hear. 100 silver taels, delivered to me personally, plus his protection in the sect. Anyone messes with me, I drop his name. It was a bribe, and hush money rolled into one. I played my part perfectly, rubbing my muddy hands together, eyes shining with greed, bowing and scraping, slapping my chest. Thank you, young master. You're my living god of wealth. I saw it all with my own eyes. You wore that villain down, and he died from his own backfiring energy. I'll say the same thing to anyone who asks. This secret dies with me. Zhou Tong nodded, satisfied. In his mind, I was just another dirt poor nobody who'd sell out his own father for 100 taels. Easy to control. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted him to think. Once every last footstep and torchlight disappeared from the alley, I finally straightened my back. I patted the heavy oilskin package hidden in my shirt lining and smiled. A real smile this time. Go ahead and play the shining hero, young master. You stand in the spotlight, spend your money buying face, and draw all the attention and enemies from the sect's higher-ups. I'll stay in the shadows, take your money, loot the dead, and use your name as a shield while I quietly get rich. Is there a more perfect partnership in this world? I picked up Zhu, who was still shaking, then squatted down and hoisted Big Li onto my back. His severed arm had been tied off with lime and cloth strips. The bleeding had stopped, but whether he'd survive the fever tonight was another question. I walked through ankle-deep bloody water, following the other low-ranking disciples back toward the flesh workshop in the south of the city. The rain washed the fake mud off my face, but my eyes were bright and sharp under the lightning. A lot of people died tonight. Big Li lost his arm and his livelihood. That red staff thug became a stepping stone for Zhou Tong's reputation. This rotten world grinds people like us to dust. But I survived, and I came out richer than before. 100 taels promised, a dead red staff's hidden stash in my shirt, and a perfect human shield to hide behind. This ridiculous, bloody gang war night? For me, it was a perfect harvest. After last night's storm, the air in Yunzhou was fresh for once. But inside our flesh workshop, it felt like a morgue. Morning training was cancelled because of all the wounded from the fight. Our yard, which should have been full of the usual chopping and hacking sounds, was dead quiet. Zhu was squatting by the stove boiling water, shaking like a leaf. I sat at my chopping block, slowly wiping down my big cleaver with a rag. Out of the dozen-plus guys from our workshop who went to the street fight last night, only 6 of us walked back. Me and Zhu, who played dead through most of it, included. The rest were just gone. Then someone from the administrative hall came through the gate, carrying a yellowed roster under his arm. The kid looked awful. Pale face, bloodshot eyes. He'd clearly spent the whole night terrified too. He cleared his throat and started reading off the dead, marking red X's next to their names with a cinnabar brush. Old Son, our squad leader, someone caved his skull in with an iron mace. Brains mixed right in with the rainwater. Zhao the pockmarked, Lu 4, Wang Iron Bull, hacked to pieces on the street. Guts everywhere, eyes gouged out. I paused my wiping for a second, but kept my face calm. Old Son was weak and always hid behind everyone else when things got dangerous. In a meat grinder like last night, guys like him die first. No surprise there. Then the messenger got to the last name on the list and smacked his lips. That guy of yours, Li Dashan. The one who lost his arm and got sent to the medical hall. Zhu scrambled over, grabbing the doorframe. How is Big Li? Is he better? The messenger just looked at him with tired, empty eyes. No mockery, just the cold numbness of someone who's seen too much death. Better? There were too many wounded last night. Not enough healers to go around. He couldn't fight off the fever. Died before dawn. Zhu collapsed against the doorstep like he'd been struck by lightning. Don't make such a fuss, the messenger said, tucking his brush behind his ear. The ones who died on the street, plus Li Dashan, They were all loaded onto carts this morning and hauled out to the mass grave outside the city. Sect orders. The dead men's work falls on you living ones. The restaurants still need their meat. You'll all have to pick up the slack for a few days. That's all. I've got more stops to make. And just like that, he left. The yard went completely silent. Erju sat on the ground, face buried in his hands, sobbing and wailing. Bigly, how could you just go like that? That's how things work in this sect. Lives have a price tag. If you're a top-tier or second-tier disciple, even a scratch gets you premium ointment and an elder pushing healing energy through your body. But someone like Bigly, a bottom-rung nobody who just lost his working arm? The moment that arm came off, he was already a dead man in the eyes of the higher-ups. They wouldn't waste a single herb on him. When he died, they just rolled him up with the street corpses and dumped him in a pit. That was his ending. I sat at my chopping block listening to Erju cry. I won't pretend I was heartbroken. What I felt was something colder and deeper than grief. Was Bigly a good man? Not really. He was petty, liked to take advantage of people, and enjoyed pulling rank on newcomers. But that half-a-dried bun he shoved into my hand on my first day, sweaty and stale as it was, that was one of the few bits of warmth I'd found in this frozen place. And last night's rain and fever snuffed that warmth out for good. Bigly's death hammered the lesson deeper into my skull. In this world, being decent and keeping your head down won't save your life. Only real strength and real power can keep you from becoming another nameless skeleton in a mass grave. While the others were still dazed with grief, I slipped back to my shack and pulled out the oilskin package I'd taken off that red staff, Chen Biao. Inside, a banknote worth 100 taels of silver, plus some loose silver pieces. I did a quick count of everything I had. My savings from before joining the sect, plus what I'd taken off Jing earlier. After spending 150 taels on blood-clotting pills and dried meat at the black market, I still had 140 left. Add this new 100, and I was sitting on over 240 taels. A serious fortune for someone like me. But the real treasure was at the bottom of the package, a crumpled little booklet. The cover read, Loach Technique, in messy handwriting. I flipped through it. Nothing fancy. It was a low-class movement skill passed around among the outer city gangs. The idea was to slide low to the ground, slipping and dodging through crowds of swinging blades, until your whole body moved like a greased eel that nobody could grab or cut. Any proper 8 Extremes disciple would spit on something this crude. But for me, for the way I fight, hiding in the shadows, playing dumb, then striking when nobody expects it, this was a perfect survival tool. Like it was made for me. Money in hand, new technique to learn. I tucked everything safely against my skin and looked up in my dark little room, eyes shining bright. Early summer morning. I was squatting behind a willow tree outside the fancy courtyard where the top-tier disciples live, waiting for the right moment when nobody was around. While I waited, I ran through my plan. Coming to see Zhou Tong today wasn't just about collecting my hush money. The bigger play was getting information. I needed to figure out how to grab the squad leader position at the Flesh Workshop. I'd been thinking about this for days. Most people see the Flesh Workshop as a stinking hellhole. But for me, it's paradise. The place is so remote and disgusting that none of the sect's higher-ups ever bother checking on it. Zero attention. Perfect cover for me to train in peace. And if I become squad leader, the benefits stack up fast. I'd get first pick of the best beast marrow and prime cuts of meat for my training. No more sneaking around slop buckets for scraps. Plus, the squad leader doesn't have to do the heavy chopping work himself. That frees up all my time and energy for practice. Now, I could have just claimed credit for killing that red staff fighter in the alley. That kind of achievement would have easily earned me the promotion. But I'd never do something that stupid. A bottom-rung pig butcher who's been in the sect less than half a year. Solo killing a veteran gang enforcer? That's basically screaming, I've got a massive secret to the whole world. Instead of a promotion, I'd get dragged to the disciplinary hall for endless interrogation, or worse. So the glory stays with Zhou Tong. I work from the shadows. After half an hour of waiting, I finally saw my chance. I crept to Zhou Tong's side door like a fat cat and knocked 3 times. Zhou Tong opened up, arm in a sling, shoulder wrapped in bandages. He wrinkled his nose at the smell of me, but looked pleased when he saw how nervous and sneaky I was acting. Good. That's exactly what I wanted him to see. I launched right into my loyalty speech before he even asked. Young master, I saw it all. You shattered that villain's heart with your incredible inner power. I'll say the same thing to anyone who asks. Even if I'm lying in my coffin, he relaxed. That's all he needed to hear. A rich young master getting swatted into a garbage pile and wetting himself. If that story got out, his reputation in the noble circles would be finished. Lucky for him, the only witness was a greedy, simple-minded pig butcher. Or so he thought. He flicked a 100-tael bank note onto the table like it was pocket change. Buy yourself some good food and keep your mouth shut. I snatched it up and even sniffed it, putting on my best money-hungry face. Thank you, young master. You're my living god of wealth. He was completely satisfied. In his mind, a guy like me, feed him enough silver and he's more loyal than a dog. Then I made my move. I shuffled closer, wringing my hands, and told him my dream. The old squad leader at the flesh workshop was dead. I wanted the job. Not for power or ambition. Oh no. I just wanted a private room, so I wouldn't have to smell everyone's stinky feet when I sleep. Zhou Tong burst out laughing. I thought you were going to do something big with that 100 taels. You just want to be the head pig butcher so you can sleep alone. The more pathetic I looked, the safer he felt. He gave me exactly what I needed. Steward Zhao Gang was managing the flesh workshop these days. His house was in the inner city, East Lane 2, third door. Bring some sincerity when you knock, and a lousy squad leader spot won't be a problem. I bowed and scraped my way out of his courtyard. Back in my shack, the moment I shut the door, every trace of that dopey grin vanished. I did the math. My original savings plus what I'd taken from Zheng Tu before, minus what I spent on blood pills and dried meat, 140 taels left over. Add the 100 from the dead red staff's pockets. Add Zhou Tong's 100-tael bribe today. Grand total, over 340 taels. A terrifying amount of money for someone at my level. Now came the tricky part, buying my way into the position. You can't just show up at an official's door reeking of pig guts, waving silver around. That's too crude, even for this world. I thought about how much to offer. The squad leader job pays 40 taels a month on paper, and Zhao Gang is a high-ranking steward whose standards are sky-high. Toss him a few dozen taels, and he'd be insulted. I needed to go big. 200 taels. I'd frame it as my entire life savings from before I joined the sect. Every last coin a country bumpkin ever scraped together, thrown away just for a private room to sleep in. That makes me look desperate, sincere, and most importantly, harmless. A big dumb spender with zero cunning. The kind of guy powerful people love, rich, obedient, and easy to control. 200 taels for a position nobody else wants. Zhao Gang would have no reason to say no. I took out Zhou Tong's 100-tael note and 2 50-tael silver ingots. Wrapped them in clean cloth. Then I went out and bought a box of the cheapest, driest green bean cakes from an old pastry shop on South Street. 2 copper coins. Came in a rough wooden box wrapped in greasy yellow paper. Back in my room, I opened the box, took out most of the cakes, tucked the cloth bundle of silver into the bottom, then laid the cakes back on top. Wrapped it all up again nice and neat. I hefted the box. What used to weigh half a pound now had a serious heft to it from those 2 big silver ingots. Any experienced player would know the moment they picked up this box that it wasn't about the cakes. I sat in the dark, waiting. No training tonight. No blood paste cooking. Just patience. I'd go when the night was deep and quiet, when the big shots in the inner city had finished their wine and were settling in for the evening. Tonight, this mud-covered nobody was going to knock on the door to a better life, using the oldest, crudest, most effective trick in the book. Late that night, I made my move. The inner city's steward quarters were nice, proper brick courtyards, one for each official. I found the third house on East Lane 2, just where Zhou Tong said it'd be. Zhao Gang was sitting in his yard soaking his feet and cursing over account books. The street fight had left the sect with a pile of bills, compensation for the dead, medicine for the wounded, bribes to the city guard. The higher-ups were angry about the costs, and guys like Zhao Gang were catching all the heat. I knocked softly. 3 taps. Who the hell is it this late? He yanked the door open, and the smell of raw meat hit him before I even opened my mouth. He pinched his nose and squinted at me. You're that butcher from the flesh workshop. What's your name again? Wang Qing, sir. He remembered me from the alley, the loyal, boot-licking idiot who'd been with Zhou Tong. That's the only reason he didn't kick me on the spot. I hunched my shoulders, shuffled my feet, and held out a beat-up wooden box wrapped in greasy yellow paper. Sir, I brought you some green bean cakes from Old Foo Shop on South Street. Just a little something. He glanced at the box and nearly laughed in my face. Foo's green bean cakes cost 2 copper coins and taste like dirt clods. His dog wouldn't eat them. He waved me off like a fly. Get lost. I don't need your garbage snacks. Sir, please, just take them. There. Solid. Real solid. Good for weighing down a desk corner, if nothing else. I pushed the box into his hands before he could refuse. The instant his fingers closed around it, his wrist dipped. His eyes changed. That tiny box of 2 copper cakes had no business being that heavy. He was an old hand. He knew exactly what that weight meant. Without a word, he peeled back a corner of the paper, poked past the top layer of cakes, and his fingertips touched cold metal, 2 fat silver ingots, and the crisp edge of a folded banknote. 200 taels, sitting right there under the dry cakes. A flicker of surprise and satisfaction crossed his face. Where'd a butcher like you get this kind of money? I put on my best pained but determined look. Sir, before I joined the sect, I was a hunter in the countryside. This is everything my parents left me, plus every coin I ever saved. My whole life savings. All of it. He was laughing inside, I could tell. In his mind, I was a sincere idiot who'd just handed over his entire fortune. He was already curious what pathetic little favor I wanted. His whole attitude transformed. The irritation melted off his face like snow and sunshine. The box of cakes disappeared into his sleeve in one smooth motion. Well, now it's chilly out here. Come inside, Wang Qing. Have some tea. He bolted the gate behind us, sat down in his rattan chair, sipped his tea, and smiled. Those cakes really were solid. So tell me, what do you want? I kept my head low. Sir, I'm just a simple man. Old Sun, the squad leader, is dead. The flesh workshop has nobody in charge. I'm the strongest worker there. I can do the work of 3 men. I'd like to take over the position. He raised an eyebrow. You want to be the flesh workshop squad leader? With that kind of money, I could move you somewhere nicer. A guard post at the front gate, or a collection job on the streets. You'd rather stay in the pig guts. I waved my hands like I was terrified. Oh no, sir. The streets are for clever people. I'm too dumb for that. I'd end up like the last squad leader, chopped to pieces. All I want is, the squad leader gets his own room. A real room. I've been sleeping next to the sewer drain, and the smell keeps me up all night. I just want a clean, dry place to sleep. Then I looked up at him with my most well-trained dog expression. And sir, don't worry. Once I'm in charge, every penny the flesh workshop owes the steward's office, I'll deliver on time. Cleaner than the last guy ever did. Zhao Gang was thrilled. I could see it in his eyes. The flesh workshop squad leader position was a joke that nobody wanted. Dirty, smelly, barely any profit. He'd been dreading having to find some poor sucker to take it. Now here I was, volunteering for the job and handing him 200 taels on top of it. Plus I seemed stupid, had no connections, and only wanted a bed. The perfect puppet. He put down his teacup and switched to his official voice. Wang Qing, you may lack natural talent, but during the street battle, you stood your ground and protected your fellow disciples. I heard about it. Our sect values that kind of loyalty above all else. He'd already cooked up the official excuse for promoting me. Then he added the bureaucratic part. He'd write a formal recommendation to the Internal Affairs Office tomorrow, citing my bravery in battle. Paperwork, approval, official badge. Give it 3 days at most. I bowed so deep I nearly touched the ground. Thank you, sir. You're like a second father to me. Go on, get out of here. You stink. He waved me off, probably thinking to himself what an absolute fool I was. 200 taels for a filthy room in a slaughterhouse. This guy must have never slept in a bed in his life. The moment I stepped outside and the cold wind hit my face, I dropped the act completely. 200 taels for a lousy squad leader post. Was I a sucker? In Zhao Gang's mind, absolutely. In mine, this was the deal of a lifetime. Since he agreed to run it through official channels, recommending me for bravery and loyalty. When the paperwork comes through in 3 days, my promotion will be completely legitimate. Nobody can question it. With that official title, the flesh workshop becomes my private kingdom. No more sneaking scraps from waste buckets. I can openly set aside the best beast blood and marrow for my training. And most importantly, as squad leader, I get the right to rest in my room during the day. The 2 things that have been holding me back for months, time and sleep, just got smashed wide open by 200 taels of silver. No rush. A couple more days. Once that badge is in my hands, it's full speed ahead. I walk through the sect compound in the dark, my steps steady and light. This brutal, chaotic world is a death trap for ordinary people at the bottom. But for a pig butcher who's about to have all the time in the world and a secret edge nobody knows about, it's wide open farmland, ripe for the harvest. 3 days crawled by. I kept my head down in the flesh workshop, chopping bones like always, just a bit slower than usual. The 200 taels were already in Zhao Gang's pocket. All I had to do was wait. The other guys were nervous. With old Sun dead, the squad leader chair was empty, and everyone was whispering about what kind of hard-ass the higher-ups would send to boss us around. Erju was fretting that some stranger would come in hot and squeeze us dry. The old butchers just shrugged. "We're meat on the chopping block," they said. "Whoever comes, we obey." I didn't join the gossip. I just swung my cleaver and waited. Then I heard it. 2 sharp gong strikes at the gate. A clerk from the steward's office walked in wearing a crisp gray uniform, carrying a red lacquer tray. 2 assistants trailed behind him. The clerk tiptoed around the blood puddles on the floor like the ground might poison him, found a clean stone slab to stand on, and cleared his throat. "Attention, Flesh Workshop." Official document from the Internal Affairs Office. Erju and the rest dropped everything and scrambled into a line. I shuffled in with them, hunched over as usual, but my eyes were locked on that tray. The clerk unrolled a document stamped with the sect's big red seal and read it out loud. Wang Qing, lowest-ranked disciple, showed bravery and loyalty during the street battle, protected his fellow disciples, fought without retreating, therefore promoted to squad leader of the Flesh Workshop, effective immediately. Silence. Erju's jaw nearly hit the bloody floor. The old butcher stared at me like I'd grown a second head. This guy? The big dumb country boy who let Jing Tu bully him into picking coins out of the blood pit? Squad leader? I didn't give them the reaction they expected. No panic, no goofy grin. I straightened my back. Slowly. My spine cracked as it uncurled, joint by joint. That hunched, invisible nobody they'd been looking at for months was gone. Standing in his place was someone taller, steadier, and a lot harder to ignore. I stepped forward, took the heavy black iron badge and the red-stamped document from the clerk's hands, and spoke in a voice I'd never used around these people before. Calm, level, no groveling. "Wang Qing accepts. Thank you for the promotion. Sorry for the trouble of coming all this way." The clerk blinked. He'd clearly been told by Zhao Gang to treat me well, and now he could see why. He dropped the attitude and smiled politely. "Congratulations, Squad Leader Wang." He also handed me a brass key, my own private room back in the inner-city compound. No more sleeping in the big shared bunkhouse with the other bottom-tier disciples. The clerk left in a hurry, like breathing our air might shorten his life. I stood there looking at the badge in my hand. One side said, 8 Extremes. The other side, Flesh Workshop Squad Leader, Wang Qing. 200 taels, turned into a real step up in the world. I clipped the badge to my belt and turned around. My eyes swept over the crew like a blade. Erju was the quickest to adapt. His face flipped faster than a mass change performer. Instant boot-licking smile, bowing even lower than he used to bow for Zheng Tuesday, Boss Wang. "I always knew you were destined for greatness. That broad forehead, those big earlobes, born leader. If it wasn't for you on the street that night, half of us would be dead." The others snapped out of it and piled on. Boss Wang, Squad Leader Wang, sweeter than calling their own fathers. That's how it works at the bottom. Yesterday's punching bag, today's boss. The badge decides everything. I let them grovel for about 3 seconds, then cut it off. Enough. Save the nonsense. I stepped up to Erju and patted his shoulder, just twice, lightly. But I let him feel the real weight behind my hands. His knees buckled, and he almost dropped to the floor. New rules. I don't like empty talk, and I don't like people scheming behind my back. Do your work honestly, and I won't skim a single coin from your pay, not like the last guys did. But if anyone tries to slack off or play games under my watch, you'll find out what I'm really like. Stick first, then the carrot. Their faces went white from the warning, then lit up when they heard I wouldn't steal their wages. Fear and relief, perfectly balanced. I tossed a piece of silver to Erju. "Take a couple guys and scrub that tea room clean, top to bottom. Then go grab my bedroll from that dump by the sewer. I'm not spending one more night in that hole. Use what's left to buy 10 pounds of wine and a few pounds of good cooked meat." We finished today's pigs early, and tonight dinner's on me. That did it. The tension broke. Erju practically skipped off to get my room ready, and the old butchers threw themselves into the work with genuine energy for the first time in days. Once they cleared out, I walked to the room in the middle of the yard, the tea room, the only proper building in the whole workshop. I pushed open the wooden door. Small place. A square table, 2 chairs, and a real wooden bed against the wall. It still smelled like the sweat of the last 2 squad leaders who'd napped here. But compared to the sewer stench of my old shack, this was heaven. I shut the door behind me. The noise and the blood smell of the yard disappeared. I sat on the bed and bounced on it twice. Solid. Sturdy. I pulled out the brass key and rolled it between my fingers. This room was for daytime rest during work hours. Back in the inner city, I had another private room waiting for me at night. I let out a long breath and fell backward onto the bed, arms and legs spread wide. Every joint in my body popped with relief. For nearly half a year since I arrived in this world, I'd been crammed into that rotting shack by the drain, grinding skills all night, dragging myself through bone chopping. All day, constantly afraid my body would just give out. That crushing pressure, that fear of dropping dead from exhaustion, ended right here, right now, on this hard wooden bed. From today on, behind this closed door, in this stinking slaughterhouse that nobody in the sect cares about, I finally have what I've needed most. The freedom to sleep during the day, legally, without anyone asking questions. I slept like the dead. No dreams, no sewer stink. Just a hard wooden bed with a thin blanket, and it felt like a king's mattress to me. When I pushed open the tea room door, stretching and yawning, the sky was already burning orange with sunset clouds. I'd slept a full 8 hours. Every bone in my body felt clear and light for the first time in months. The yard was nearly done for the day. First day under a new boss. Nobody wanted trouble, so the guys had worked harder than usual. A few of them were scrubbing blood off the stone floor with buckets of water. Erju was squatting by the steps, burning yellow paper in a fire bowl. For Bigley, figured since you gave us that bonus money, I'd buy some spirit paper, so he's got cash to spend down below, Erju said. I still read. So he doesn't have to be stingy anymore. I patted his shoulder. The dead are gone. The living still need to live. Go round up the boys. Time to eat. That cheered him right up. Soon the big square table in the yard was loaded with braised beef, roast chicken, and 2 big jugs of cheap but strong white liquor. All on my coin. Didn't cost much, but free food always tastes better. To Boss Wang. May you rise higher and higher. Erju raised his bowl, shameless as ever. I took a sip. I don't like drinking, but this bowl I had to drink. That's how it works. You eat with your people, they feel like you're one of them. Basic leadership. After a few rounds, I set down my chopsticks and got to business. Brothers, I used to chop bones right next to you in the mud. I know how hard and disgusting this work is. Now that I'm in charge, every tax and fee that Zheng Tu used to squeeze out of you, gone. All of it. Their eyes nearly popped out. A couple of the old guys looked ready to cry. But, I said, keeping my voice friendly with just enough edge, we need to keep our work clean so the stewards have nothing to complain about. Then I made my real move. I've noticed that when you guys butcher those iron-horn oxen and red-scale pigs, the deep bone marrow and heart blood in the crevices are hard to clean out. They pile up on the chopping blocks, stink up the place, and attract bugs. I pointed to several big new wooden barrels I'd set up. From now on, I'll handle that dirty work myself. Whenever you come across that stuff, the heart blood clots, the deep marrow from the high-grade beasts, scrape it all out clean and toss it in these barrels. When I'm on night duty, I'll haul it to the backyard for composting. Your hands stay clean, the workspace stays neat. Fair deal? They looked at each other. Erju slapped his thigh. Boss Wang, you're a saint. That slimy blood and marrow is the worst part of cleanup. You're taking the nastiest job off our hands. We'd be crazy to say no. Everyone agreed eagerly. From now on, they'd scrape every last bit of that waste out and save it all for me. I almost broke character and laughed out loud. This is what real strategy looks like. I give them a small gift, no more skimming their wages. In return, they hand me the single most valuable thing in this entire workshop, the concentrated blood essence and bone marrow from high-grade beasts. The best fuel for my training. All of it, collected neatly in barrels, delivered to me willingly. And these guys are thanking me for taking out their trash. After dinner, I sent them home happy and drunk. Once the yard was empty and dark, I got to work. First, I went back to my old shack and grabbed my steel bow, wrapped it up tight, and tucked my remaining bank notes and the Loach technique manual against my body. I took my new brass key and walked to the inner city compound for the first time. My private room was tiny, just a bed and a small cabinet, but it was dry, clean, and didn't smell like feet. Perfect. I chiseled out a hidden compartment in the brick wall behind the bed leg and stashed my money and bow inside. This room would be my safe house and vault from now on. Then I locked up and headed back to the flesh workshop. The barrels the guys had filled were waiting for me. Fresh red scale pig heart blood and iron horn ox marrow, still warm. Because they'd done a thorough job scraping it all out, there was twice as much as what I used to sneak from the waste bins. I lit the fire and cooked it down. Half an hour later, I had a thick pot of top-quality blood marrow paste, dark purple and steaming. Sure, I could afford pills now with all my silver, but why waste money when free premium fuel is sitting right here? I drank every drop and felt the heat explode through my body. Then I pulled out the Loach technique. The opening line was as crude as the skill itself. When the enemy draws his blade, don't face him head on. Shrink your bones, press to the ground, cling like a maggot. Slippery and formless. That is the Loach. The diagrams showed the practitioner squashing their body impossibly low, twisting hips and spine to slide and change direction in tight spaces. A technique designed purely for surviving knife fights in narrow alleys and chaotic brawls. No elegance, no beauty, just survival. I loved it. I memorized the first level's movement patterns and walked out to the middle of the stone yard. The floor was still slick with pig blood from the day's work. Perfect practice surface. I took a deep breath, dropped my body low, legs bent at an angle that would make a normal person's bones scream, and pressed flat like a giant toad. Go. I twisted my hips and pushed off with my toes. I shot across the stones like a kicked bar of soap, sliding 2 full body lengths in an instant. Then I lost my balance and face-planted straight into the mud and blood. I spat out the grime and grinned like a maniac, because right when I crashed, the glowing screen in my head flickered. Practiced Loach technique once. Posture deviation detected. Force correction feedback triggered. Experience 1. Current progress. Not yet learned. 1/100th. I don't care how ugly it looks, as long as there's a progress bar. I dropped back down like a toad and went again. Fall. Correct. Fall again. Correct again. All night long. The dark, empty workshop echoed with the sound of sliding and the occasional thud of my body smacking stone. Under my cheat ability's relentless error correction, every fall taught me something. The stiff crashes turned into smooth rolls. The straight-line slides became curving dodges that wove between stone pillars and chopping blocks. By the end, my big muscular body was twisting and flowing across the bloody floor like a boneless eel, a huge black mudfish gliding through the slick. I trained until the 4th watch, squeezing out every last bit of energy from that blood paste. I checked my progress. Loach technique. Not yet learned. 85 out of 100. With my mid-level body as a foundation, learning a basic movement skill like this is almost too easy. I rinsed off with a bucket of cold water, changed into clean clothes, and went into my tea room. Lay down on my hard wooden bed, pulled up the blanket. No anxiety, no stress, no rushing to chop bones at dawn before some overseer yells at me. This little kingdom is mine now. I decide the schedule. Being the boss is nice, I mumbled and closed my eyes. I was asleep in seconds. After the first snow hit Yunzhou, the weather turned bitter cold. But inside my flesh workshop, life was better than ever. Boss Wang, here's today's iron horn ox marrow in this barrel, and the red scale pig heart blood in that one. The boys scraped it out real clean. Not a scrap of meat mixed in. Erju stood at my door, bowing and grinning as usual. I tossed him 2 copper coins. Cold out. Go buy the guys some cheap wine to warm up. He bounced off happy as a puppy. These past few months since I bought the squad leader position have been the best of my life. During the day, I sleep in my tea room with nobody bothering me, catching up on all the rest I'd been missing. The old butchers work harder than ever to keep their no-tax deal, so I don't lift a finger. At night, all that garbage, beast blood and marrow they collect for me becomes my training fuel. My salary doubled with the promotion. I've got savings on top of that. Every few days I swing by the black market and pop blood-clotting pills like candy. Between the free premium materials and the pills I can afford, my strength has been skyrocketing. Tonight, after dark, I stripped to the waist in my hidden corner of the backyard, drank a scalding bowl of blood marrow paste, and launched into my routine. 8 extremes, small frame, fists like tree roots slamming into the air, each punch making a dull boom. And between the punches, my feet moved in ways that would make people's jaws drop. 1 second I'm planted like a mountain. The next I'm sliding across the icy stones like a boneless creature, twisting midair to throw a punch from an impossible angle. That's my Loach technique, trained all the way to perfection. Then it happened. As I finished the last move and breathed out a long stream of white vapor that hung in the air like an arrow before fading, golden light exploded in my mind. All 3 techniques, 8 extremes small frame, 2 principal stance, and the Loach technique, hit maximum mastery at the same moment. The notifications came pouring in like music. Small frame perfected, lifespan plus 8 years. 2 principal stance perfected, plus 8 years. Loach technique perfected, plus 2 years. Breakthrough to peak skin tempering realm, blood energy, feeding back into the body, plus 10 more years. I watched my stats update. Name, Wang Qing. Age, 18. Maximum lifespan, 106 years. 106. 28 years of life added in one night. That's not just long for a normal person. That's long even for a martial artist. As long as nobody kills me first. There really is a path to long life, I whispered, breathing hard. Then my whole body started tingling and tightening. The blood energy at peak level was feeding back into my skin. I looked down and squeezed my arm. The skin had a dark, bluish metallic sheen to it, smooth and tough, like leather that's been worked 1,000 times. I grabbed a boning knife and dragged the sharp edge hard across my forearm. It made a scraping sound. The blade left nothing but a faint white scratch. Didn't even break the skin. Peak skin tempering. Practically knife-proof. This and 100+ years of life. That's my real armor in this brutal world. But then I hit a wall. I threw another set of punches. Strong as ever. But the golden screen in my head stayed dark. No experience gained. Nothing. The message was cold and clear. Basic techniques at maximum level. Current foundation insufficient for next stage evolution. Must absorb and fuse other similar external martial arts to break through the limit and develop a new technique. The progress bars had all turned gray. Account locked. I sat down on the cold steps and thought hard. My system can't create advanced martial arts from nothing. It needs fuel. Feed it enough techniques of the same type, and it can strip out the best parts and forge something new. Something that breaks through the skin-tempering ceiling into the tendon-changing realm. That's an incredible cheat. But where do I get the fuel? I'd actually seen this coming. A couple weeks ago, when I felt the ceiling getting close, I started quietly asking around. I slipped 2 taels of silver to that clerk who delivers paperwork and asked about learning the next level. His answer hit me like a bucket of ice water. You want the tendon-changing chapter? Forget it. In the 8 Extremes sect, skin-tempering mastery is the ceiling for people like you. You want to go higher? Go to the Steward's Hall and sign a blood contract. Once you sign, you're not a free man anymore. You swear a poison oath. You, your future wife, your children, your grandchildren, all of them become hereditary slaves and death soldiers for the sect's main bloodline. They say kill, you kill. They say block a blade with your body. You block it. Want to climb? Trade your freedom, and your descendants' freedom, forever. That's how the big sects work. Remembering those words, I spat on the ground. I spent 200 taels on this squad leader job specifically so I could be free, sleep when I want, train when I want, answer to nobody. And now they want me to sign away my life and my future family's lives just for a technique manual? They can eat dirt. So the sect path is a dead end. Completely blocked. I sat back on my bed and thought it through. The system says it doesn't need some legendary secret art, just similar external techniques. Maybe not 1 or 2, but 5, 8, even 10 basic martial arts to use as raw material. For a normal person, learning that many would be insane. But with my cheat ability, grinding isn't a problem. I'm not afraid of hard work. The real problem is finding them. Buy them on the black market? Martial arts manuals, even the lowest grade ones, are rare and expensive. The occasional torn copy shows up and gets bid through the roof. My money can buy pills, but mass-buying technique books would drain me dry in no time. And robbing people for them? Too risky. One wrong target, and my shiny new 106-year lifespan gets cut real short. Sneak into other martial schools to steal techniques? Also no good. Every school guards their methods tightly, and my system can't even register a technique unless I learn it to a certain depth. The sect's rigid class system stood in front of me like an unclimbable mountain. I pushed open the window. Cold wind rushed in, carrying a few snowflakes. I stared out into the dark. Is there really no place in this whole world where they don't care about your birth or your class? Where they just look at your fists and your results, and let you earn techniques fair and square? I rubbed my numb cheeks, let out a long sigh, and sat in the silence of the snowy night, thinking. 3 days after the first snow, the temperature dropped hard. But the real chill came from a government notice slapped on the main wall of the sect compound, stamped with the bright red imperial seal of the Great Xia dynasty. The border was in trouble. The front lines were crumbling. The court had issued a mandatory draft, pulling fighting men from every gang and martial school in Yunzhou to serve in the military. A big gang like ours, living fat off the city, got hit with a heavy quota. The moment the news spread, the bottom-tier disciples lost their minds. Going to the front lines isn't like street fighting where you can duck into an alley when things go bad. It's a real war, arrows falling like rain, heavy cavalry smashing through formations. Even skilled fighters get ground to paste. For guys like us at the bottom, it's basically a death sentence. Then I heard a crash from the other side of our wall, followed by screaming. Old Lou from the firewood yard had dropped a stone slab on his own leg on purpose. Snapped the bone clean, it was poking through his pants. He'd rather be a cripple for life than get sent to die. And honestly, everyone understood the math. Zhu threw himself on the ground in front of me, crying and begging. Boss Wang, they gave our workshop 1 slot. I've got a blind mother at home. If I go, she starves to death on the street. Please don't let it be me. The rest of the butchers dropped to their knees around me too. 15 men, 1 slot. Looks like decent odds until you're the one picked. I looked at them. These guys who'd fight over an extra sip of broth on normal days, now groveling in the dirt. This world really does treat lives like garbage. I kept my face calm. Get up, all of you. Nothing's decided yet. Panicking won't help. Right then, the gate swung open and Steward Zhao Gang walked in wearing a thick fur coat, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Deep eye sockets, messy hair. The pressure of filling the death quota was eating him alive. The butchers scattered like mice. Wang Qing. My office. Now, I followed him into my tea room and shut the door. He didn't sit. He paced back and forth, then stopped right in front of me. Brother Wang, I've treated you well. I'm the one who put you in this chair. Now I need you to help me out. I bowed and gave him my loyal dog speech. Sir, without you I'd still be sleeping by the sewer. Whatever you need, I'm your man. He sighed and dropped his voice. The quota they gave me is 30 men. I stuffed in every sweeper, latrine cleaner, and troublemaker I could find. Got 29. I need one more body. Your workshop has to give me a name. I don't care how you pick. Just get it done before dark today. One more person to send to the meat grinder. I put on my conflicted face, furrowed brow, pained expression. Sir, these boys work hard for me day and night. Picking any of them, it doesn't feel right. Cut the fake mercy, he snapped. The higher-ups only care about filling the list. If I can't deliver the last name, I'm the one getting shipped to the front. You think I want to do this? The room went cold. I let the silence hang. Then, slowly, like a man wrestling with his conscience, I looked up. Sir, I'll give you the name. But let me ask one thing first. Is it really certain death out there? The Imperial Army. Is there nothing to gain? Zhao Gang relaxed a little. He figured I'd agreed to be the bad guy and pick someone. So now he needed to feed me a good story I could use to sell the poor sucker on the idea. Who says it's certain death? That's just ignorant talk from people who don't know anything, he snorted. The Imperial Army runs on military merit. In our sect, the advanced techniques are locked behind blood contracts and slavery. Bottom-tier guys like you will never touch them. Then he pointed north. But the military is different. The Great Xia arsenal has hundreds, maybe thousands of basic external techniques, advanced body hardening methods, even internal energy arts. As long as you earn enough merit, you can trade for any of them. And it's not just techniques. Merit gets you promotions. Kill enough enemies, and a common soldier can rise to captain, general, even commander-in-chief. They don't care about your birth or family name. They only care how hard your fists hit and how long you stay alive. That's when it hit me. Something exploded in my chest. Not fear, not dread. Pure, ice-cold excitement. Hundreds of basic external techniques, available for trade. No class barriers, no blood contracts. Just earn merit and take your pick. For a guy like me, maxed out account, stuck at a ceiling, desperately needing piles of similar techniques to feed into my system as fusion fuel. This wasn't a death trap. This was a supermarket built specifically for me. Sir, I said, lifting my head. The meek act fell away from my face. Don't bother picking from the old guys. They'd just embarrass our sect out there anyway. Zhao Gang frowned. What do you mean? You trying to protect them? I told you, the quota. I'm not protecting them. I looked him straight in the eye. Still hunching a bit out of habit, still looking rough around the edges. But something in my gaze must have been different, because he went quiet. That last slot. I'll take it myself. You? He stumbled back a step, staring at me like I'd lost my mind. Are you insane? You're the squad leader. You spent 200 taels to buy this position. You've had a good thing going for a few months, and now you want to throw it away to go die? Sir, you just said it yourself. The military only cares about merit. Techniques for the taking. Even a chance to become a general. I smiled. A real smile this time. Bright and a little wild. I'm comfortable here, sure, but I want a real future. I'm strong. Instead of cutting rotten meat for the rest of my life, I'd rather go out there and fight for something bigger. Real martial arts, real rank, real power. He stared at me for a long time, making sure I wasn't joking. Fine. Can't talk sense into a man who wants to die. He pulled out the roster and wrote, Wang Qing, in the last spot without hesitation. In his mind, his little pep talk, the one he'd crafted for me to use on some poor butcher, had accidentally brainwashed the messenger instead. What an idiot, right? He was already calculating. With me gone, the squad leader job opens up again. He can sell it to the next sucker for another 200 taels. Double profit. Tomorrow morning, main yard, roll call. Don't you dare try anything funny. He looked at me like he was looking at a dead man, then walked out. Alone in the room, I cracked my neck. The joints popped clean and sharp. Hundreds of techniques in the Imperial arsenal. Trade military merit for martial arts. Kill enemies, climb ranks, no ceiling. I looked out the window toward the north, and for the first time in months, I couldn't keep the fire out of my eyes. This cramped little sect with its petty rules and slave contracts? I'm done with it. Late that night, I went back to my private room in the inner city compound to pack. By the light of a tiny oil lamp, I pried open the hidden compartment under my bed and laid out everything I owned. Over 100 taels in banknotes. I folded each one flat and sewed them into the lining of my underclothes with needle and thread. In times like these, money only feels safe when it's pressed against your skin, moving with your heartbeat. 3 blood-clotting pills left in a black jade bottle. I wrapped it tight and tucked it against my chest. The Loach Technique Manual, dog-eared, stained with the dead red staff's blood and dried mud. Every movement pattern was already carved into my muscles and bones. Fully mastered. No use keeping it. I held it over the oil lamp and burned it to ash, then swept the ashes into a rat hole. Last, I pulled out my steel war bow and a quiver of razor-sharp, heavy arrows. I ran my calloused fingers along the cold, heavy bow and couldn't help but smile. The Great Xia Arsenal. Hundreds of basic techniques. Here I come. I slung the bow across my back, tested the fit, then lay down on my bed fully dressed. Did I feel any of the doom and despair you'd expect from a man about to be shipped to the front lines as cannon fodder? Not even a little. I felt like a merchant heading to a rich new city with a bag full of capital. I closed my eyes, satisfied, and was snoring within minutes. The next morning, I splashed cold water on my face, strapped the bow to my back, and opened my door. I froze. All 14 of my butchers were standing outside in a neat row. Every single one. They hadn't gone to breakfast. They'd been waiting in the freezing dawn air, shivering, silent. Erju stood at the front, eyes swollen red like ripe peaches. He was clutching a clean gray cloth bundle that smelled faintly of soap. The moment he saw me with my pack, his tears started falling again. Word had spread last night. The new squad leader had volunteered himself to fill the draft slot so none of his men would have to go. These old guys, who'd spent decades in the gutter watching people stab each other in the back, couldn't believe it. The quiet country boy who'd only been their boss for a few months had taken a death sentence onto his own shoulders to protect a bunch of worthless old Butchers. Ere Zhu's knees buckled. He dropped hard into the mud and raised the cloth bundle above his head with both hands, veins bulging on the backs of his wrists. Boss, the boys pooled their money last night and bought 20 big white flour buns from old Wang's shop on the corner. There's braised pork tucked inside each one. They're still warm. Please take them for the road. His voice cracked and went hoarse. We can never repay what you've done. We all know the front lines are almost certain death. If anything happens to you out there, every year at Qingming Festival and on the 1st of October, even if we have to beg on the streets, we'll burn you the finest spirit money. We won't let you go poor in the afterlife. The other 13 men dropped to their knees behind him. 14 foreheads slammed against the cold stone. Thud, thud, thud. I opened my mouth. I almost said, relax, I'm going there to grind experience and collect technique manuals, not to die in a ditch. Stop crying. But I looked at Zhu's face, so raw and sincere it hurt, and swallowed the words. In a world that eats people alive, this kind of feeling, no scheming, no calculation, just pure gratitude and sadness, is actually pretty rare. All right, get up. You'll get your pants dirty kneeling in the mud. I took the bundle with one hand. Heavy. It smelled good. I'm taking the buns. After I'm gone, work smart, keep your heads down, and don't butt heads with whoever they put in charge. Look out for each other. I didn't drag it out. No tearful farewell scene. I tightened the bow on my back and walked out of the compound gate with long, steady steps. Behind me, 14 old butchers stayed on their knees for a long time. I could hear Zhu sobbing all the way down the lane. At the main yard's big stone square, the scene was grim. 29 unlucky souls were already herded into the center. Pale, hollow-eyed, some crying, some so scared their legs wouldn't hold them. One skinny servant threw himself at Zhao Gang's feet, clutching 10 taels of silver, begging to be swapped out, wailing about his newborn baby at home. Zhao Gang kicked him over. He didn't even glance at the silver rolling across the stones. This was an imperial quota. Anyone caught taking bribes to let someone off would get their entire family executed. Nobody was buying their way out of this one. When I strolled into the square with my gear on my back, calm as a man heading to market, I stuck out like a sore thumb among all the weeping and wailing. Wang Qing. Fall in. Zhao Gang barked at me, irritated. Sure thing, sir. I smiled and ambled to the back of the line. I even took a moment to look around at all the sobbing, desperate faces and thought to myself how brutal this ancient conscription system really was. Then I heard footsteps, deliberately casual, deliberately elegant. Zhou Tong appeared, wearing a brand-new white robe with a white fox fur draped over his shoulders, surrounded by a flock of inner disciples like a prince holding court. His shoulder wound was long healed with expensive medicine. He'd skipped morning training just to come watch the condemned men depart, to enjoy the view from the top. His eyes swept across the lineup. Every man he looked at dropped his gaze. Then his eyes landed on me at the back of the line. He smiled that patronizing smile of his and spoke loud enough for the whole square to hear. Wang Qing, I heard from Steward Zhao. You volunteered to take the slot and spare the old and weak in your workshop. Such loyalty, such courage. Truly a model of what an 8 Extremes man should be. He sighed dramatically. If only I didn't have important duties assigned by the elders, I would march to the front with you and drink the enemy's blood together. Then he unclipped a jade pendant from his belt and tossed it to me. This jade has been with me for years. It's yours now. Fight bravely out there. Earn your merit. And if you make it back alive, the Zhou family's door will always be open to you. Inside, Zhou Tong was celebrating. The only witness to his humiliation in that dark alley, the guy who saw him get slapped into a garbage pile and wet himself, was now marching off to die voluntarily. The last loose end, tying itself up. And all it cost him was a cheap jade pendant and a pretty speech that made him look noble and generous in front of the whole sect. What a deal. I caught the pendant. One touch told me it was worthless junk. But I didn't let a flicker of that show. I bowed deep, holding it with both hands, face twisted into the most moved, overwhelmed expression I could manage. Deep in my eyes, a tiny spark of amusement. The look you give someone who has no idea they're the fool in the room. Thank you, young master. Thank you for your kindness. I'll kill extra enemies just for you. Even if I die, I'll die charging forward. I won't disgrace our 8 Extremes sect. Good man. That's the spirit. Zhou Tong nodded, swished his fur cape, and strolled back to the VIP platform. Roll call finished. Names verified. Heavy hoofbeats rumbled in from the distance. A squad of city garrison soldiers in black iron armor marched into the square, armed with long spears and iron rods, faces hard as stone. No speeches. No ceremony. They took charge of our group of 30 like they were herding livestock. On your feet. Line up. Anyone drags their heels, they get the whip first. The lead officer cracked his whip. Like a shepherd driving sheep, he pushed our pale, hollow-eyed group out through the gates of the 8 Extremes compound, out through the city walls of Yinzhou, and toward the Great Xia dynasty's military recruitment camp beyond. Under the fake, concerned gazes of Zhou Tong and the sect's leadership, 30 men marched out into the cold. 29 of them thought they were walking to their graves. I was the only one who knew exactly where I was going, and I couldn't wait to get there. 10 miles outside Yinzhou, the Great Xia recruitment camp spread out along the base of a mountain, tents as far as I could see. Before we even got close, I could smell it. Horse dung, rust, and the iron tang of old blood. The kind of smell that seeps into a place where killing is the daily business. The 29 guys from our sect shuffled along the muddy road like condemned prisoners heading to the executioner. I walked at the back, steady and easy, studying the camp layout with genuine interest. Armored soldiers were everywhere. Heavy infantry marching in formation, their boots shaking the ground. War horses screaming. Officers cursing. The raw pressure of thousands of armed men packed together hit those street-fighting gang boys like a wall. Most of them could barely breathe. The escort officer cracked his whip. Move it. Once you walk through that gate, you're not sect disciples anymore. You're soldiers of the Great Xia dynasty. Your weapons in the hands of the men upstairs. They herded us into a field by the training ground where several hundred other conscripts were already squatting in the dirt, all pulled from various gangs and martial schools across Yinzhou. Every face looked like a wilted plant. Then a one-eyed officer in battered fish-scale armor climbed onto the command platform. Burn scar covering half his face, black leather whip in his hand, the kind of killing intent in his single eye that only comes from years of wading through corpses. Stand up straight, he roared, and hundreds of men scrambled into crooked lines. I don't care if you were a red staff or a hall masterback in your little gang. On my ground, dragons curl up and tigers lie flat. He laid out the sorting. Spear users, left, you're in the pike battalion. Sword and shield users, right, frontline blade battalion. Can't do anything. Back row, supply corps. Push grain carts and carry dead bodies. Everyone knew the score. Pike and blade battalions are first-wave meat shields. But supply corps is even worse. No real armor. Sitting ducks if the enemy raids the camp. There was no good option. People shuffled into their lines, miserable. I stood exactly where I was. Didn't move an inch. Instead, I calmly took the black cloth bundle off my back and unwrapped it, layer by layer. My steel war bow emerged, jet black, gleaming cold, and a quiver of razor-sharp, heavy arrows beside it. Sir, I don't want to be a meat shield. The whole field went quiet. Every eye turned to me. I looked up at the one-eyed officer and grinned my dumb country boy grin. I want to be an archer. The laughter started immediately. My old sect mates stared at me like I'd gone crazy. Archers stand in the rear, get better rations, and don't have to fight hand-to-hand. It's the best assignment there is. Who does this pig butcher think he is? The one-eyed officer stomped down from the platform, whip in hand, and got right in my face. You think you can grab any fancy bow and sneak into the back lines to eat free rice? I'll see right through your little trick. But then his eye actually landed on the bow in my hands. His sneer froze. He was a career soldier, 15+ years. He knew weapons. Full-body 100-forged steel frame. Bowstring of ox sinew braided with iron wire. His pupil shrank. This thing has at least 300 pounds of draw weight. In the army, pulling a 150-pound bow makes you an elite archer with double rations. 300 pounds? That takes someone with terrifying arm strength, at minimum a mid to late skin-tempering cultivator. A human siege weapon. Even in the best units, that kind of shooter gets treated like a treasure. He didn't believe I could actually pull it. Nice bow. Probably bought it to show off. You've got 3 breaths to get your ass to the blade battalion before I split you in half. I didn't flinch. This wasn't the sect. No green bean cakes needed. No boot licking. Here, only one thing talks: strength. Time to drop the mask. I stepped back, sank into a perfect two principles stance, legs rooted in the mud like iron pillars. Left hand on the bow grip. Right thumb hooked the string. Sir, let me show you whether this is junk or not. I drew a breath and pulled up just half of my peak skin tempering power. My right arm swelled. The muscles inflated like a balloon. My ragged sleeve ripped apart with a sharp tearing sound, exposing thick blue-gray tendons packed with explosive force. The bow began to bend. Metal grinding against metal, loud enough for the whole field to hear. Half draw, three-quarter draw, full draw, not a tremor, not a wobble. I held the bow at full moon like I was posing for a painting. A human iron tower radiating pressure, so heavy the air itself seemed to stop moving. The one-eyed officer's remaining, I nearly fell out of his skull. Incredible arm strength. Rock-solid base. He could see what the crowd couldn't. My wrist wasn't shaking at all. 300 pounds wasn't even close to my limit. Target, he screamed. Get him a thick wooden target at 100 paces. Now, two supply soldiers scrambled out and set up a 2-inch thick wooden dummy 100 paces away, then ran for their lives to get clear. I drew a heavy steel arrow from my quiver and knocked it smooth as water. This time, I didn't use the silent shooting technique from my basic archery skill. In a military camp, bigger is better. I wanted noise. I wanted shock. I released. The 300-pound bow unleashed a sound like a thunderclap. The steel arrow became a black streak so fast the eye couldn't follow. It actually left a visible white shockwave trail in the air. A deafening explosion from 100 paces out. The 2-inch solid wood target didn't slow the arrow down at all. It punched a fist-sized hole clean through the center. Wood chips flew everywhere. The arrow kept going another 40-plus feet and buried itself halfway into the trunk of a 100-year-old tree at the edge of the field. The feathered tail was still buzzing and vibrating. Dead silence. A few heartbeats passed. Then the entire field inhaled at the same time. The gang toughs who'd been laughing at me stood there with their mouths hanging open like strangled ducks. If that arrow hit a person, forget leather armor. Even the Empire's heaviest iron plate wouldn't stop it. It would go through the man and the armor together. But nobody was more shaken than the 24 Extremes disciples who'd come with me. They rubbed their eyes and stared like they were seeing a ghost. That's Wang Qing, the butcher? The dumb pushover from the flesh workshop? Are you kidding me? Your pushover can single-hand a 300-pound steel bow. One of them swallowed hard, suddenly remembering how meek and obedient I'd always acted back at the sect. Cold sweat soaked through his shirt. No wonder he volunteered so easily. He fooled Steward Zhao. He fooled young Master Zhou. He fooled all of us with that harmless act. It finally clicked for all of them. I wasn't some loyal idiot who'd sacrificed himself to save the old butchers. I was a monster who'd been playing weak in a pond that was too small for me, and I'd come here to hunt military merit in a much bigger ocean. Some of them turned pale, remembering times they'd bossed me around or cracked jokes at my expense. They were quietly thanking the heavens I hadn't snapped their necks for fun. I lowered the bow, breathing easy, heart rate normal, like I'd just flicked a mosquito off the string. I looked at the one-eyed officer, pulled my power back in, and put on that trademark gap-toothed country smile one more time. Sir, I used to hunt in the mountains back home. Never learned any fancy internal arts. Just born with big arms and strong hands. This bow suits me pretty well. Being an archer, that's not too embarrassing, is it? The officer swallowed so hard I could hear it. Every trace of contempt was gone from his face. What replaced it was the wild, greedy joy of a man who just dug up buried treasure. Embarrassing? You call this embarrassing? He rushed forward and grabbed my arm like he was holding onto a winning lottery ticket, his voice cracking with excitement. Born with divine strength. Yes, beautiful. Forget the recruit barracks. Starting today, you're in my elite marksman battalion. Double rations, top grade. I let my grin spread even wider. The elite marksman battalion's tent was just logs and oilcloth, but compared to the poor guys outside sleeping in open mud with nothing over their heads, it was luxury. The one-eyed officer walked me in personally. About 30 men in the unit, all big guys with long arms, born bowmen. In this era, training one decent archer is harder than training 10 swordsmen, so these men were treated like precious cargo. I found an empty straw mat and set my bow down. Almost immediately, a cook came in hauling 2 big buckets on a shoulder pole, one full of steaming white rice, the other packed with stewed fatty lamb. falling apart tender. Eat up. The one-eyed officer banged his ladle on the bucket. We got a new man with God-given strength today, so I pulled an extra half-lamb from the kitchen. Wang Qing, get over here. First bowl's yours. The old soldiers all looked up. In the military, seniority is everything. A new recruit getting served first? That was the officer publicly declaring I mattered. I didn't hesitate. Hesitation here means weakness. I grabbed the biggest bowl, and the officer personally scooped 2 heaping ladles of lamb and broth right over the rice. The juice soaked into every grain. Eat. Fill up. Tomorrow I need you pulling that iron monster at full draw. I squatted by the tent entrance and shoveled it in. The lamb was soft, rich, bursting with fat and warmth. A million times better than the stinking blood paste I'd been cooking in the flesh workshop. While I ate, I glanced outside. A few dozen yards away, my old 8 Extreme sect brothers were huddled in the cold mud, each holding a cracked wooden bowl of stale grain mixed with bran and a watery soup with no trace of oil. Hours ago, we'd all been conscripts marching together. Now I was eating double-ration lamb in a warm tent, and they were choking down husks in the wind. A few of them stared at the steam rising from my bowl, swallowing hard. The envy in their eyes had turned to genuine fear and respect. Now this is living, I muttered, licking the last drop of broth clean. I'd barely set my bowl down when an old soldier shuffled over, big bushy beard, 2 front teeth missing. They called him Old Hay. Senior man in the unit, could pull a 180-pound bow, deadly accurate. He sized me up, looked at my steel bow, and grinned through his gapped teeth. So, brother, what's your story? Just a country hunter. Did a few months of pig butchering for the 8 Extreme sect. Pig butcher. Right. He clearly didn't buy it. He pointed at my bow. I've been shooting for 15 years. I know quality when I see it. That thing's 300 pounds minimum. I can barely get it to half draw. You pulled it full. He leaned in closer. Level with me, brother. With skills like yours, you could be a squad captain in the city garrison. Why'd you let yourself get dragged in with the cannon fodder? What are you really after? I knew better than to feed these veterans some patriotic nonsense. They'd laugh me out of the tent. If I wanted in, I had to speak their language. I leaned toward Old Hay and let greed and ambition spread across my face. I'll be straight with you. Back in my sect, I was bottom rung. No money, no connections, no chance of ever touching advanced martial arts. But I heard that in the army, if you kill enough enemies, you can trade military merit for technique manuals from the Great Xia arsenal. Any technique you want. I've got one goal: stack up enough merit, grab some good martial arts, and go home to open my own school and live like a king. Old Hay stared at me for a second, then slapped his thigh and roared with laughter so hard bits of lamb flew out of his mouth. The noise brought the one-eyed officer over. What's so funny? Lamb not enough to plug that leaky mouth of yours. Old Hay pointed at me. Sir, this new brother Wang is the real deal. He says he joined up just to earn merit and trade it for technique manuals at the arsenal. The officer sat down on his camp stool and looked at me with interest. Kid, you've got ambition. The Great Xia arsenal really does have everything. Basic external arts, advanced body hardening methods, even the internal energy secrets from the big martial sects. Enough merit, and they'll hand it right over. He tapped his boot with his whip. But do you know how the merit system works? And what things cost? My ears perked up. This was exactly the intelligence I'd come here for. Sir, I just got here. I don't know anything. Please, educate me. I poured him a cup of hot tea. He accepted it, clearly enjoying being the expert, and started explaining. Our military keeps it dead simple. They count heads, not names. Kill an ordinary enemy foot soldier on the battlefield, cut off his left ear. That's 1 merit point. Kill an enemy squad leader. That's 10. A company officer, 50. And if you manage to take down an enemy battalion commander, he paused for effect. 500 points. I did the math instantly. 1 point per kill for regular soldiers. And techniques, sir? I couldn't hold back. If I wanted a mid-tier method that could take me to the tendon-changing realm, how much would that cost? The officer nodded approvingly. At least you're thinking big. Forget those garbage basic techniques that cost 3 to 5 points. Not even worth mentioning. The mid-tier arts you're talking about start at 100 points. The good ones run 2 or 300. For a regular grunt, that's a lifetime of fighting, and they'd still come up short. But for someone with your kind of natural power, stay alive on the front lines, pick off a few enemy officers, and it's just a handful of hard battles. On the outside, I sucked in a sharp breath and nodded like the price had scared me. On the inside, my heart was pounding like a war drum. 100 points for a mid-tier technique that money can't buy in the outside world? For normal soldiers, scraping together a few 100 points means surviving dozens of near-death battles. And even if they get a manual, they still risk going insane trying to learn it. But for me, with my cheat system that corrects every mistake and grinds any technique to perfection, and I'm desperate for exactly these kinds of techniques to feed into my fusion engine, this price was so fair I could have cried. Regular soldiers, 1 point each. Squad leaders, 10. Company officers, 20. With my mastered archery picking off targets from the back row, the entire Great Xia arsenal was basically an all-you-can-eat buffet waiting for me. I've hit the jackpot, I thought, keeping my eyes down, barely containing the fire burning behind them. I really did walk into a wholesale market. All right, stop daydreaming, the officer said, mistaking my silence for shock at the prices. He stood and clapped my shoulder. One step at a time, one battle at a time. Survive first. But before his words even faded, a sound tore through the quiet night sky outside. Low, long, and mournful, a war horn made from a bull's horn. 2 blasts. Then a third. Urgent. Chilling. Every old soldier in the tent changed color instantly. They leaped off their straw mats like springs, grabbing weapons before their feet hit the ground. March horn. Old Hay bellowed, face gone ugly. The one-eyed officer's burn scar twitched violently. His single eye turned hard as iron. He kicked his stool across the tent. The northern border must be collapsing. That's a blood order. Full army forced march through the night. He jammed his helmet on and roared at the tent. Marksman battalion, listen up. Full quivers, full rations. You've got half an incense stick to assemble. We're moving. Now, we didn't give the new recruits a single moment to breathe or adjust. This camp outside Yinzhou was just a collection point. The real meat grinder was thousands of miles north, at the Empire's border. Outside, horns and hoarse screams and officers cursing blended into a deafening roar. I breathed in a lungful of freezing night air. I didn't panic like the new recruits stumbling around in the dark. I didn't complain about marching right after dinner. I tucked my shirt tight, picked up my heavy steel bow, and locked the full quiver of arrows onto my back. New road starts now. I licked my lips, pushed through the tent flap, and stepped out into the endless dark, into wind and snow and the long march ahead. A forced march in the Great Xia dynasty is nothing like the stories make it sound. No heroes on horseback sipping tea. It's bodies grinding through mud, mile after mile. Once we left Yunzhou heading north, the road was a mess. Tens of thousands of troops and supply wagons had churned the snow-covered highway into a trench of freezing slush. Every step sank past my calves, and pulling your foot out made a wet sucking sound. For the regular conscripts, it was a nightmare. My old 8 extreme sect brothers barely lasted half a night before they were gasping like dying dogs. Some of them collapsed face first into snow ditches and never got up. The enforcement squad would jab them with spear tips to check if they were dead, then kick the bodies into the gutter. Not even a straw mat to wrap them in. In the marksman battalion, things were different. I had my steel bow wrapped in cloth on my back, 5 personal steel arrows, 2 full quivers of standard-issue armor-piercing arrows on my belt, plus food and water. Probably 70 or 80 pounds total. But I walked through that frozen muck like I was strolling around a village after dinner. Breathing slow and steady, every step landing clean, barely a splash. That's what happens when you've mastered the 2 principles stance to perfection. My body controls its weight and balance by pure instinct. Old Hay was stumbling along next to me, gasping and rolling his eyes. What? What did they feed you growing up? This is a forced march. I've chased wild boars through mountains and never been this tired. You're carrying 100 pounds of iron and you're not even sweating. I grinned and handed him my water flask. Just grew up doing hard work, Old Hay. Nothing special. Just got strength that won't quit. He took a long drink and looked at me with growing respect. In the military, nobody cares about smooth talk. They respect power, endurance, and the kind of man who has your back when things get ugly. I'd already carried some of his rations for a stretch earlier. That goes a long way with old soldiers. At this pace, he said, wiping his beard, 3 more days and we'll reach Juma Pass. And brother, once we get there, it's not just tired legs anymore. That's a real meat grinder. Old Hay, who are we actually fighting? Back in Yunzhou, they just said the front was in trouble. Nobody told us anything. I'd been in this world for a year and barely knew anything beyond my little corner of it. Time to fix that. The northern barbarians, who else? Old Hay spat a thick wad into the mud. Those animals don't farm, don't weave. They live on the frozen plains fighting wild beasts for food. They worship some blood god and fight like rabid dogs. No fear of death at all. He poked my chest. You're a big guy, but their elites are 8 feet tall, wrapped in heavy armor, swinging 100-pound spiked maces and meteor hammers. And they ride war beasts, snow wolves and iron-armored rhinos that charge right through our lines. Our regular shield troops hit one of those charges and turn into paste. Instead of fear, I felt excitement spark in my chest. Heavy armor? Huge targets? Charging straight at me. With my 300-pound bow, unless they've mastered some legendary internal energy shield, no amount of iron plate is going to save them. The bigger and slower they come, the easier they are to hit. So how does our army work? That one-eyed officer seemed pretty important. How big does it go above him? Smart to learn the ranks, Old Hay said. Saves you from accidentally disrespecting someone who could have you killed. He broke it down. 10 men make a small banner, led by a small banner officer. 50 men under a chief banner officer. 100 men under a centurion. That's our one-eyed boss. Above that, a chiliarch commands 1,000, and those guys are serious martial artists who can practically fly. With your kind of strength, Old Hay slapped my shoulder. If you survive Juma Pass and stack up enough merit, making small banner officer is guaranteed. Get lucky and take out an enemy commander? You could jump straight to chief banner. Good to know. My main goal was still the arsenal and its mountains of technique manuals, but climbing the ranks? I wasn't going to say no to that either. Then I asked the question I'd been turning over in my head for a while, the practical one that actually mattered. Old Hay, we're archers. We shoot from the back, behind trenches, or up on walls, right? Obviously. These arms are for pulling bowstrings, not getting chopped up in the front row. But here's the thing, I said, putting on a troubled face. If I shoot a barbarian dead from 100 paces, he falls in the middle of the charging field. When the battle's over and they go collect ears for the merit count, what's stopping some frontline soldier from cutting that ear off and claiming it as his own kill? Aren't we just doing free work for them? Old Hay stared at me, then burst out laughing so hard his missing teeth whistled in the wind. You've already figured out how to protect your kill count before you've even seen a battlefield. He shook his head like he was looking at a country bumpkin who'd just arrived in the big city. You think our military judges are fools? You think elite archers' merit is that easy to steal? If they couldn't sort out who killed who, the whole army would have mutinied years ago. He pointed at the quivers on my belt. When a soldier kills with a sword or spear, the wound is obvious. When we kill, there's an arrow sticking out of the body. Simple. But couldn't someone pull the arrow out and hack the body to fake a melee kill? I pressed. Old Hay snorted. Pull it out? Our arrows have barbed heads with blood grooves. Once they're buried in bone, a regular soldier would have to rip half the body apart to get one out. Any supply officer with working eyes would spot that an A. Second, but the real thing is this. He pulled an arrow from his own quiver and pointed to a small brand mark near the base of the shaft, just below the feathers. See that? It's called a name arrow. Because we marksmen do long-range kills from the rear, Command gives us special permission to carve our name or personal mark into every arrow we're issued. Whoever's arrow is in the body, that's whose kill it is. After the battle, the supply officers go through the corpses one by one with their ledgers. Your name arrow in a dead man? That head count goes straight into your account. And if some frontline grunt dares to pull out a marksman's name arrow to steal the credit, Old Hay's eyes went cold. That's called fraudulent, merit claim, and deceiving the commander. They catch you, they chop your head off on the spot and hang it from the camp gate as a warning. My eyes lit up like lanterns. Name arrows. A kill tracking system built right into the weapon. No need to charge into the front lines. No need to wrestle over ears in a pile of corpses. I just carve my name on an arrow, put it through someone's throat from 100 paces, and that kill is banked like money in a vault. Safe and clean. Got it now? Good. Stop standing there with your mouth open, Old Hay said, slapping my arm. Command just issued fresh arrows. Start carving your mark before we hit the battlefield. If you shoot someone without a mark on your arrow, that kill is gone. On it. Thanks, Old Hay. I pulled the standard issue military dagger from my belt without breaking stride. One by one, I drew arrows from my quiver, spun each shaft between my fingers, and carved deep into the hardwood just behind the arrowhead. Quick, firm strokes. Wood shavings flew. In seconds, the characters, Wang Qing, appeared on each shaft, cut deep enough that even being soaked in blood wouldn't erase them. Carve one, slide it back. Pull the next. Carve again. My hands moved with the steady, focused rhythm of a farmer about to harvest his field. One arrow, one merit point. One merit point, one basic technique manual to feed into my system. I looked at the growing rows of arrows in my quiver, each one stamped with my name, and my grin spread wider and wider. These weren't just cold steel killing tools. These were pickaxes, each one ready to mine the Great Xia arsenal clean and smash through the wall blocking my path to the tendon-changing realm. 10 days of forced marching, and we finally reached Juma Pass, the Empire's northern gate. A massive black wall stretching across the horizon, scarred and stained dark red with old blood and burn marks. We didn't even get a chance to catch our breath. This wasn't some orderly battle with formations and strategy. This was a full-blown siege, already at boiling point when we arrived. Thousands of northern barbarians crashed against the walls like black waves, over and over. War drums shook the ground. Battering rams slammed into the gates with booms that rattled your teeth. Bodies, ours, were being carried down from the walls in a steady stream. Some of the new recruits took one look and collapsed into the mud, legs gone to jelly. These guys used to think they were tough, swinging cleavers on street corners back in Yunzhou. Out here, they were nothing. Marksman battalion. Get up on that wall. Now, our one-eyed officer kicked aside a frozen recruit and pointed upward, screaming. Suppress those heavy-armored bastards. We charged up the ramp. The second I stuck my head above the wall, the smell hit me, blood and burning flesh, thick enough to gag on. Severed limbs everywhere. Down below, the barbarians were pushing siege towers forward, driven by waves of expendable slaves. Behind the slaves stood the real threat, their elite warriors. 8 feet tall, just like Old Hay described. Beast skin cloaks over crude iron plate armor, swinging 100-pound spiked maces, howling like animals. Some rode massive armored wolves. Arrows came whistling up from below. Several of our soldiers got pinned to the battlements instantly. Old Hay yanked me into cover between 2 Merlins. Their sharpshooters are out there. Stay behind cover. We lob arrows blind over the wall. Hit whoever we hit. Show your head and you're dead. That was the standard approach. Hide. Arc your shots into the crowd. Hope for the best. Not my style. I dropped flat and slithered along the blood-slicked wall like a fat lizard, using my loach technique to slide silently to a half-collapsed section about 50 feet away. A catapult had smashed one of the battlements into rubble, leaving a gap with perfect sight lines down into the enemy ranks. The broken wall hid most of my body and my bow. A natural sniper's nest. Old Hay watched me go with his mouth hanging open. How is that new kid better at crawling along walls than I am? He moves like a career thief. I pressed my eye to a crack in the bricks and scanned the barbarian army below. Regular foot soldiers? 1 merit point each? Please. I'm not here to beg for scraps. My eyes swept past the ragged slave cannon fodder and locked onto a barbarian officer near the base of a siege tower. Full fish-scale iron armor, beast horn helmet, waving a spiked mace and screaming orders at his men. A 10-man squad leader at minimum. 10 merit points. You're mine. I braced into my 2 principal stance, rooted to the wall like I was welded there. Peak skin-tempering blood energy surged through my right arm. Muscles swelled. The 300-pound bow bent into a perfect full moon against the wall, smooth and quiet. One breath. Fingers released. My silent shot activated. The bowstring's vibration was killed by the precise tremor of my muscles. No sound. The heavy armor-piercing arrow became a black ghost, crossing 100 paces in an instant. Down below, that barbarian officer had his mouth wide open mid-scream. A wet thud. The scream stopped. The arrow punched clean through his iron chest plate, through his sternum, and the impact launched his body backward, pinning him to a wooden siege beam behind him. Dead before he knew what happened. Golden light exploded in my mind. Enemy officer killed. Strength feedback. Archery experience 10. Current progress. Beginner mastery, November 5000. My blood pumped hot. Shooting rats in the mountains gave me 1 point per kill. One enemy squad leader gave me 10 points of experience and 10 merit points for the arsenal. Double profit from one arrow. Greed took over. My eyes jumped past the small fry and found a much bigger target. A barbarian centurion sitting on an enormous armored rhinoceros behind the front lines. Full heavy plate, chain mail layered underneath. 50 merit points. A fat sheep begging to be slaughtered. Die for me. I drew again. Full moon. Silent release. The black arrow streaked toward his face, but at the last instant, every hair on that barbarian's body stood on end. Years of battlefield instinct screamed a warning in his gut. Without even seeing the arrow, he roared and swung his 150-pound mace in a wild arc clang. Sparks exploded. The mace deflected my arrow off course. It buried itself in the mud nearby, tail feathers buzzing. But 300 pounds of force still split his hands open. Blood poured from his grip. He nearly toppled off the rhino. Sniper! Shield wall! Cover me! He bellowed, and his bodyguards instantly raised massive iron tower shields around him. I pulled back behind cover, heart pounding. Damn! High-level warriors and their freak reflexes. Lesson learned. My bow hits like a cannon, but I'm still only at peak skin tempering. Against commanders with that kind of animal instinct and reaction speed, a cold shot isn't a guaranteed kill if they're alert. And now I drawn attention. Don't get greedy. Shoot and move. That's the rule. I slid out of that position like a cat with its tail stepped on, using my loach technique to glide along the wall to another spot 50 feet away. New angle, new cover. This time, I forgot about the big fish entirely. Can't crack the 50-point targets? Fine. I'll feast on 10-point and 20-point soft targets all day. I became a machine. 300 pounds of draw weight. Rocksteady aim. One arrow, one kill. I never stayed in one spot longer than 3 breaths, even if nobody had spotted me. Shoot, slide, reposition. Shoot, slide, reposition. A barbarian chief banner officer climbing a siege ladder took an arrow through the neck from an angle he never expected. A squad leader directing a battering ram had his helmet, and half his skull, exploded by a shot from a completely different section of wall. Enemy officer killed. Archery experience 20. Enemy officer killed. Archery experience 10. The golden notifications fired in my brain like a machine gun. It was almost intoxicating. In half an hour of fighting, I ghosted along that wall like a specter, constantly shifting positions. And down below, something strange started happening. In the sections where the attack had been fiercest, the barbarian advanced suddenly. Stalled. Their junior officers and squad leaders, the guys keeping the charge organized and the troops motivated, were dropping dead one after another. Every single one killed by a single arrow through something vital. No warning, no chance to dodge. Without their officers, the barbarian grunts in those areas fell into chaos. The assault crumbled. Old Hay peeked over the wall, saw the trail of dead officers below, then looked back at me, hopping from spot to spot like a monkey, every arrow lethal, and nearly dropped his bow. His throat bobbed. I thought this kid was just strong. He's the goddamn angel of death for officers. Not just deadly accurate, but impossible to pin down. My wall crawling was so smooth that return fire couldn't even clip my sleeve. The one-eyed officer noticed too. He watched my kill rate from across the wall, his single eye glowing with excitement. Good, good, good. He kicked a couple of archers who'd been wasting shots into the air. Are you all blind? Watch him. Learn. That is what a marksman is supposed to be. Someone tell the kitchen. Tonight Wang Qing gets a whole lamb to himself. I didn't hear the cheering. I was flat on the cold bricks, wiping rain and blood spray off my face. The drums finally faded. The first wave broke. The barbarians pulled back like a receding tide. I counted my arrows. The quiver was more than half empty. 16 squad leaders killed. 2 chief banner officers. By Great Siam military pricing, 16 times 10 plus 2 times 20. 200 merit points. In one battle. In half an hour. The system gave me its final tally. 16 enemy squad leaders killed. Experience 160. 2 enemy chief banner officers killed. Experience 40. Current progress. Beginner mastery. 201/5000. I looked at that progress bar, jumped from 11 to 201 in a single fight, and I had to bite my cheek to keep from laughing out loud. The barbarian horns sounded retreat. and that black tide of warriors pulled back north, leaving the ground littered with their dead. First wave over. Half an hour later, back in our battalion tent, the record keeper sat behind his desk with the merit ledger, calling out names. This was every soldier's favorite part, payday. Old Hay. 8 regular barbarian infantry killed. 8 merit points. Zhao 3 hide. 5 kills. 5 points. Li Iron Post. 9 kills. 9 points. The old boys were grinning ear to ear, bragging about their shooting. The one-eyed officer sat there beaming too. His men's kills made him look good. Then the record keeper flipped to the last page. His voice caught in his throat. He swallowed hard and stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. New recruit. Wang Qing. Barbarian squad leaders killed. 16. Barbarian chief banner officers killed. 2. Total military merit. 200 points. Highest score in the battalion. Dead silence. Then the whole tent inhaled at once. Old Hay's lamb bones slipped out of his fingers and fell into the fire pit. The guys who'd been celebrating their 7 or 8 points looked like someone had slapped them. 200? 1 defensive battle? 18 enemy officers, solo? I sat on my hay bale, legs spread, my steel bow resting across my thighs, no black cloth hiding it anymore. My face was clean now, bronze-colored skin showing through, and there wasn't a trace of the meek pushover from the 8 Extremes sect. I flicked the bowstring with one finger. The deep hum filled the tent like a predator's growl. In the military, acting weak gets you shoved to the front to die. If you've got power, you show it. The one-eyed officer froze for 3 full seconds, then threw his head back and roared with laughter. He rushed over and slammed his palm on my shoulder, shaking with excitement. 15 years on this border, and I've never had a soldier this good. You're a born killer. 200 points of top merit wasn't just my glory. It was his achievement as a commander. Tomorrow he could strut into the Kiliarka's meeting like he owned the place. Sir, you're too kind. They're big targets. Easy to hit. I stood up, half a head taller than him, and got straight to business. We agreed merit can be traded for technique manuals anytime. When can I visit the arsenal? Promotions and rank could wait. In a slaughterhouse like this, without overwhelming strength, even a general can get his head chopped off. My only priority right now, get a real advanced technique and push my cultivation up. What's the rush? Think I'd cheat you? He was in too good a mood to argue. He shouted at the record keeper to issue my 200-point merit token and first kill iron badge, then waved his arm. Come on, I'm taking you to the arsenal myself. Let's see what you pick. Half an incense stick later, we walked into a stone hall deep in the camp, heavily guarded. The beginner-level military arsenal. Rows of wooden shelves lined the walls, stacked with technique manuals, pills, and weapons, all sorted by category. See those outer shelves? The officer waved dismissively. Garbage. 3 to 5 points each. Basic body-hardening junk for talentless grunts. Train your whole life, and you'll still be stuck at skin tempering. Not worth looking at. He led me straight to the back, where jade-covered boxes sat on special racks. With your natural strength and peak skin tempering foundation, you want the real stuff. I scanned the labels. Tiger Roar Golden Bell Shield. Silk Winding Grappling Hand. Iron Rhino Mountain Crushing Method. These are all mid to upper tier martial arts that develop internal energy and open the path to the tendon-changing realm, the officer explained proudly. Any one of these would sell for thousands of taels on the outside. They run about 150 merit points each. Your 200 covers one, plus some good pills on the side. My eyes locked onto one manual, yellowed cover, heavy with a sense of raw violence. The Iron Rhino Mountain Crushing Method. I picked up the description card. A superior military body hardening and formation breaking art. The practitioner channels violent blood energy to temper the body's great tendons. At full mastery, the skin becomes iron, the tendons become rhino horn, and every movement carries the force to shatter mountains. Warning: this technique is extremely fierce and domineering. The training process involves excruciating pain, like 10,000 needles piercing the body simultaneously. Those with insufficient foundation risk snapping their major tendons or suffering catastrophic energy backlash, resulting in permanent disability. Only those with iron will and furnace-level blood energy should attempt this. The supply officer warned me kindly. Brother Wang, this one's powerful, but almost nobody in our border army has actually mastered it. Too demanding. One mistake, and you're crippled for life. Think carefully. I'll take it. No hesitation. Excruciating pain? Risk of crippling backlash? For normal martial artists, this is a coin flip with death. For me, with my cheat system's absolute error correction, as long as the basic framework is sound, the system smooths out every flaw, heals every hidden injury, and eliminates any risk of going berserk. The more violent and domineering a technique is, the higher its ceiling and the more destructive its power. As long as there's a progress bar, I can grind anything. With 200 points to spend, why would I pick anything less than the most terrifying option on the shelf? That's the spirit. The officer slapped my back approvingly. On the battlefield, you need that kind of guts. Your natural strength plus this mountain-crushing method. You'll be a monster, sir. About the remaining 50 points, I turned to the supply officer. Got anything stronger than blood-clotting pills? I knew that pushing a high-level technique's progress bar would require massive amounts of violent blood energy. Regular pills wouldn't cut it anymore. Absolutely. The supply officer's eyes lit up at a big customer. He pulled 5 palm-sized black iron jars from a locked cabinet. Tiger bone blood-killing pills. Military grade, issued to officers breaking into the tendon-changing realm. 1 pill equals 5 regular blood-clotting pills. Extremely potent. 10 points per jar, 5 pills each. Your 50 points gets you all 5 jars? I'll take them all. I handed over my merit token. 200 points, spent clean in the time it takes to drink half a cup of tea. 1 top-tier technique manual. 25 military-grade power pills. The officer watched me walk out loaded with loot and nodded with satisfaction. Smart kid. Doesn't waste merit on money or titles. Puts everything where it counts. I like that. Rest up tonight. Tomorrow could be another ugly fight. I saluted and walked out into the snowy night, arms full of jade box and iron jars. The wind cut like knives, but inside I was burning. Other people fear this iron rhino method because of the hidden injuries, the unbearable pain, the risk of destroying their own body. But with my system's correction engine, all I need to do is keep the pills flowing and grind the progress bar. Pure manual labor. And what really excited me was the fusion prompt my system had shown before, the one that appeared when my basic techniques all maxed out. Now I had a plan. I'd mapped out my martial arts into 4 dimensions. Movement technique, currently the Loach technique. Foundation and breathing, the 2 principles stance. Close combat killing, the 8 extremes small frame. Long-range sniping, basic archery. This new Iron Rhino method was clearly in the close combat killing category, same family as the 8 extremes small frame. My plan: grind the Iron Rhino to full mastery with pills, then use the system's fusion function to merge it with the already perfected small frame. Feed the old technique in as fuel, with the superior one as the main body. See what kind of monster technique the system generates. And after I break into the tendon-changing realm, the fusion engine won't accept low-grade junk forever. Building a bridge, you can use mud. Forging a legendary sword, you need meteor iron. The higher I climb, the more expensive and advanced the fuel techniques need to be. Those 3 to 5 point basic manuals on the outer shelves? Already irrelevant to me the moment I stepped into the inner section of the arsenal. 1 Iron Rhino manual cost 150 points. Future techniques for the tendon-changing or bone-forging realm might cost hundreds, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of merit points. I took a sharp breath of frozen air, but the fire in my eyes only burned hotter. I don't care how expensive the techniques get. I don't care how much fuel the system demands. I only care that the arsenal has the goods and the battlefield keeps serving up barbarian officers to kill. Merit points? I'll carve them out of enemy skulls with my arrows. Of course, 1 step at a time. Crossing from skin tempering to tendon changing is a transformation of the body's fundamental structure, not something that happens overnight. The basic small frame took me nearly half a year. This advanced technique would have a progress bar long enough to make a person weep. But as long as the bar lights up, it's just a matter of time. I hugged the jade box tight and marched toward my tent with long, quick steps. Tonight, I crack open the new book and get that progress bar started. That night, the winter wind outside Juma Pass howled like a dying animal. Snow hammered the tent walls. Inside, 2 fire pits kept us barely warm. 30-odd big men were packed together, snoring loud enough to shake dust off the ceiling. The day's battle had knocked everyone out cold. I crept to my spot at the back of the tent, the best position, most sheltered from the wind, thickest animal hides underneath. Perks of being the battalion's top scorer. I sat cross-legged and laid everything out in front of me. The J box with the Iron Rhino mountain crushing method, and 5 black iron jars of tiger bone blood-killing pills. I rubbed my frozen hands together and opened the yellowed manual. By firelight, I burned every word of the opening breathing method and energy pathways into my brain. This technique was nothing like the gradual, patient training I'd done before. This was a self-destruction method. Normal martial artists toughen their skin slowly, like polishing stone with water. The Iron Rhino way? You deliberately blast your own violent blood energy into your major tendons like steel spikes, ripping them apart. Then you use medicine to patch them back together. Break to rebuild. No breaking, no rebuilding. Basically, you tear your own tendons apart and let them grow back stronger. The pain is exactly what you'd imagine. Perfect. I like simple and brutal. I tucked the manual away and cracked open the first iron jar. The smell hit me like a wall. 10 times stronger than blood-clotting pills, a vicious mix of raw blood and sharp medicinal herbs that shot straight to the top of my skull. 5 dark red pills sat inside, each one laced with thin black lines across the surface. The infamous tiger bone blood-killing pills, famous in the border army for either making you stronger or making you a cripple. I pinched one out and swallowed it. 3 heartbeats. Nothing. On the 4th, it felt like someone shoved a lit bomb into my stomach. A wave of heat so violent I can't describe it ripped through my gut and exploded outward into every limb. I doubled over like a boiled shrimp, choking back a groan. This wasn't medicine nurturing my body. This was a wildfire inside my flesh. No time to think. I forced the raging energy along the pathways described in the Iron Rhino method, driving it straight into the major tendons of my arms and spine. A tiny ripping sound, one only I could hear, echoed inside my body. My eyes flew wide open, shot through with red veins. Pain. The worst pain I've ever felt. Like someone sawing through my tendons with a rusty blade. Like 1,000 red-hot needles being driven into the cracks between my bones. I clamped my jaw shut so hard I thought my teeth would crack. Veins bulged across my forehead like black worms squirming under the skin. Cold sweat erupted from every pore, soaking through my undershirt in seconds, dripping off my chin onto the straw. But I didn't stop. I forced myself into one of the technique's twisted, unnatural postures and drove the energy in again. Another impact. Muscles spasmed. Tendons screamed. Right when I felt the main tendon in my right arm about to snap, about to turn me into a cripple right here on this straw mat, golden light exploded in my mind. Severe posture deviation detected. Major tendon on verge of rupture. Force correction feedback triggered. A cool, gentle current surged up from deep in my spine, like something from beyond the natural world. It wrapped around that nearly broken tendon, suppressed the tearing pain, and tamed the wild pill energy like calming a rabid horse. Thread by thread, it wove the medicine into the damaged tendon, repairing what I'd just destroyed. Practiced Iron Rhino mountain crushing method once. Experience 1. Iron Rhino mountain crushing method advanced to beginner. Current progress. Beginner, 21 thousandths. Lifespan 2 years. Maximum lifespan, 108. That's how the night went. Over and over. Swallow the violence. Channel it in. Feel my tendons tear. Let the system catch me at the edge of destruction. Repair, repeat. Every cycle was agony beyond anything I'd experienced. The kind of pain that makes you want to pass out, but you can't because the fire in your veins won't let you. By dawn, I'd burned through the entire night. I opened my bloodshot eyes and stared at the numbers floating in my mind. 120 progress points gained. Beginner level reached in a single night. For a normal border army elite, even with pills, one session of this training would require 3 to 5 days of recovery afterward. Crossing the beginner threshold would take half a year at minimum. I did it in one night. Worth it. My voice came out like sandpaper. My whole body was trembling from the pain and exhaustion. But I could feel it clearly. The major tendons in both arms and across my back, after being torn and rebuilt 120 times, were noticeably thicker and tougher than before. My peak skin-tempering foundation had been hammered even harder and deeper. I wiped the cold sweat off my face, pulled on a rough shirt, and stood up. I turned around to wake Old Hay and the boys. They were already awake. Every single one of them. All 30-something veterans. sitting upright on their bedrolls, 30 pairs of eyes locked on me in dead silence. No morning cursing. No fighting over boots. Just staring. The look in their eyes had completely changed from yesterday. Gone was the mild amusement they'd had watching a lucky newcomer. Gone was the jealousy over my merit score. What was left was pure, bone-deep respect, the kind you give to something dangerous, something not quite human. A couple of the more timid ones actually flinched when my bloodshot eyes swept over them. They'd been awake for hours. They'd watched the whole thing, or at least heard it. A man sitting in the dark, drenched in sweat, body convulsing, suppressing screams for an entire night, deliberately shredding his own body apart and putting it back together, over and over, without stopping once. Morning, brothers. You're up early. I cracked my neck. Pop, pop, and gave them a casual grin. It was the most normal greeting in the world. But paired with the aftermath of what they'd just witnessed, that smile made a few of them look more scared than they'd been facing barbarian war wolves. Old Hay swallowed hard, kicked off his blanket, and answered in a voice noticeably more respectful than yesterday. Morning, Brother Wang. It's snowing hard out there. You had a tough night. I already got your wash water heated up. It's by the fire pit, Brother Wang. Not, new kid. Not, hey you. In this border army where only strength and guts earn respect, that one word, brother, meant I'd torn off whatever was left of my harmless newcomer disguise. And I'd done it with my own hands. Morning at Juma Pass started with biting north wind and horses snorting in the cold. No war drums, no barbarian howling. The truth about border army life is that actual fighting is maybe 10%. The other 90% is boring, backbreaking labor. Brother Wang, got your wash water ready. Just heated it up. Zhao Three-Hide came shuffling over with a chipped wooden basin, bowing deeper than he'd ever bow for the one-eyed officer. Thanks, old Zhao. Set it down. I sat up on my straw mat and accepted the service like it was the most natural thing in the world. Last night's self-torture training session had done the trick. These veteran soldiers were thoroughly spooked. In the military jungle, the more you back down, the more people treat you like a mule. But show them you're harder and meaner than anything they've seen, and even on your second day, they'll call you brother and fetch your water. Crude rules, but honest ones. I washed up and stepped outside. The camp was buzzing with activity, though none of it was glamorous. Hundreds of supply troops were hauling logs and boulders up to the walls for the next battle. The pike and shield battalions were out with shovels, digging mud and repairing defenses the barbarian catapults had smashed. They looked like dirt-covered prairie dogs. The marksman battalion? We had it made. Training an archer costs too much to risk injuring his arms and fingers on manual labor. Command had given us a permanent exemption from all construction duty. So after breakfast, the boys just sat around oiling their bows in the sunshine. Practically a vacation. I grabbed a stool in a sheltered spot and was thinking about where to find some live targets to grind my archery experience. I need actual kills for that skill to progress, when a commotion interrupted me. A group of pike battalion soldiers were hauling wooden buckets on shoulder poles toward the camp gate. Night soil duty, carrying the whole camp's waste to the composting pits outside. The stench hit us from 20 yards away. The leader was a bald, thick-necked bully everyone called Lu de Biao, a classic camp troublemaker. He was already furious about being stuck on latrine duty. Then he walked past our area and saw us sitting around polishing bows in the sun while he carried buckets of filth. His eyes swept across our group. The veterans, he knew them all, didn't dare mess with any of them. Then his gaze landed on me. New face, ragged clothes, must be a fresh conscript. Hey, you, big new guy. He slammed his carrying pole on the ground, sloshing some of the contents. He pointed right at my nose. Camp rules. New soldiers do 3 days of chores for the veterans. Get your ass over here and carry these buckets to the pit outside. Old Hay and the other marksmen froze. Then their faces went strange. Old Hay actually looked at Lu de Biao with something like pity and took 2 steps backward, probably to avoid the splash. Of all the people in camp to pick a fight with, you chose the man who pulls a 300-pound bow one-handed and spent last night ripping his own tendons apart for fun? I was sitting there cleaning an arrowhead with a rag. I stopped, looked up slowly, and fixed my eyes on him. You talking to me? My voice was flat. Zero emotion. Who else? You see any other new guys here? He stomped over, glaring down at me, and reached for my collar. I think you need a lesson about whose fists run this. He didn't finish. Boom. A sound like a battering ram hitting a gate. Nobody, not even old Hay standing 3 feet away, saw my leg move. 1 second Lu Debiao was reaching for me. The next, his 200-pound body was folded like a shrimp, feet off the ground, flying backward over 10 feet through the air. He crashed, with perfect accuracy, directly into his own night soil buckets. 3 big wooden tubs shattered on impact. Yellow, black, and unspeakably foul liquid exploded everywhere, giving him the most thorough bath of his life. His screaming was something I'll never forget. Half from the cracked ribs, half from what was pouring into his open mouth. His Pike Battalion buddies stood there paralyzed. They'd expected me to jump up and obey. Instead, their boss was swimming in his own cargo, and I hadn't even gotten off my stool. What's going on here? Fighting in camp. A military judge in black armor came running over with his guards. Private brawling is a serious offense. One of the Pike soldiers scrambled to the judge first, pointing at me. Sir, this new recruit attacked our man for no reason. We just asked him to help out. The judge frowned, looked at Lu Debiao thrashing in the filth, then looked at me, still sitting calmly on my stool. Which unit are you from? You think you can assault people in Juma Pass? I didn't panic. Didn't play victim. Didn't whine about, he started it. I stood up, unclipped my unit badge, and handed it over. Sir, I'm Wang Qing from the Marksman Battalion. These hands can pull a 300-pound bow. Yesterday on the wall, these hands killed 18 barbarian officers. I looked him straight in the eye. These hands are for killing enemy commanders. If they get covered in human waste and my grip slips when I'm drawing. If one arrow goes wide and I miss a barbarian chief banner officer. I glanced at Lu Debiao retching in the muck and let my voice go cold. Can their Pike Battalion afford to take the blame for that missed kill and the battlefield consequences? Arrogant? Absolutely. But in the military, where results are everything, it was also an argument nobody could argue with. The judge looked at the badge. His eyes widened. He'd heard about yesterday's monster sniper who'd solo killed 18 enemy officers and scored 200 merit points. He just hadn't known what the man looked like. He did the math in about 2 seconds. On one side, an irreplaceable elite marksman who could pick off enemy generals from 100 paces. On the other, a troublemaking pike grunt nobody would miss. He spun around and kicked the pike soldier who'd complained flat on his back. Are you blind? A Marksman Battalion elite is a camp treasure. You garbage think you can order him around? Guards, drag these idiots to the punishment post. 10 strokes of the rod each. His men swarmed in and hauled Lu Debiao and his crew away like dead dogs, screaming all the way. Then the judge turned back to me. His whole attitude flipped. Almost polite. He handed my badge back. Brother Wang, next time some fool bothers you, just call our patrol. Don't dirty your bow hand. After the latrine incident, our tent became a no-go zone. Soldiers from other battalions gave me a wide berth, afraid a wrong look might earn them a trip into the nearest ditch. I was happy with the quiet. With the rest of the day free, I grabbed my bow and arrows and wandered to the far back of the camp, a dumping ground near the hills where the kitchen threw its slop. Filthy, stinking, and completely deserted. Even patrol soldiers avoided it. But it was perfect for me. The rotting food attracted swarms of fat camp rats and flocks of crows circling overhead. I stood in the shadows 50 paces out. Drew. Full moon. Released. The heavy arrow pinned a fat rat to the mud mid-bite. Killed live target. Archery experience 2. Current progress. Beginner mastery. 203/5000. Yep. Has to be a live kill. That's when the experience really flows. I remembered the rush of shooting barbarian officers on the wall. 10, 20 experience points per arrow. Rats were smaller payoff, but every little bit adds up. All day long, I haunted that garbage dump like a ghost. Crows in the sky, rats in the gutters, even stray dogs sneaking in for scraps. Every living thing became a target. Each arrow deepened my muscle memory with the 300-pound bow. By sunset, my arms were sore and I'd wiped out every rat and crow in the area. But I'd pushed my archery skill up nearly 200 more points, past the 400 mark. Not bad for a day of pest control. I dragged myself back to camp, ate my double-portion elite dinner, and waited for dark. Then the real work began. Deep in the tent, cross-legged on my mat, I popped another tiger bone blood-killing pill. Boom. The savage heat exploded through my gut like a stampeding fire bull, raging through every channel in my body. Come on, I clenched my jaw and drove that wild energy into my tendons again. The familiar agony, 10,000 needles, 10,000 saw blades, crashed over me like a wave. Veins bulging, sweat pouring, teeth grinding. But through all that misery, the golden flashes in my mind kept chiming, steady and sweet as a lullaby. Practiced Iron Rhino mountain crushing method once. Experience 1. Current progress. Beginner, 25 1,000ths. Day shift. Hunt rats and crows for archery experience. Night shift. Tear myself apart and put myself back together for the Iron Rhino. This was my life now, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. The snow at Juma Pass came earlier and harder than anyone expected. Half a month in, the plains were buried knee-deep in white. Every step crunched and stuck. Our 10-man patrol squad was trudging through a pine forest about 30 miles out from the pass, checking on supply routes. Old Hay was at the front, dog fur hat pulled low, cursing the weather with every breath. If we run into barbarian raiders out here, our legs can't outrun their wolves in this snow. The veterans behind him grumbled along, hunched like frozen quails. I walked at the back, and I was the only one not suffering. These past 2 weeks, I'd been popping tiger bone pills every night and grinding the Iron Rhino method until dawn. Still a long way from the next milestone, but the changes to my body were already obvious. I wasn't even wearing a coat, just a thin cotton military shirt with the collar open. Snowflakes that landed on my neck or chest evaporated instantly, turning to little wisps of steam. The blood energy churning under my skin was like a furnace. In this freezing weather, I felt comfortable and dry. Brother Wang, you're not made of meat, Zhao Three-Hide said, shivering next to me, staring at the steam rising off my chest. We're out here suffering, and you look like you're strolling through a garden. I asked Old Hay why he was so nervous about running into barbarians in this deep snow. Wouldn't they be holed up too? He stopped and explained. The northern barbarians don't farm. When winter hits and their livestock freeze, they starve. Every year they send out small raider groups, 15, 20 riders, to hit our supply convoys and slaughter border villages. The army calls it autumn raids. These raiders are starving, desperate killers, Old Hay said. Run into them and you're dead. He froze mid-sentence. Some old hunter's instinct kicked in. He dropped flat and pressed his ear to the frozen ground. His face went white. Hide. Get down. Now. The veterans dove into snow ditches behind the pines. Before they'd even settled, dark shapes burst through the curtain of blowing snow ahead. 20-plus northern barbarian raiders. Not on horses, on snow wolves, massive beasts the size of water buffalo that bounded through the deep snow like it was nothing. Each rider wore thick beast hides over crude iron plate, carrying long-handled sabers or meteor hammers. Hungry eyes, fanning out in a search pattern, heading straight toward our trees. It's over. Zhao Three-Hide buried his face in the snow, shaking so hard his teeth rattled. Blood Wolf Guard. At least 2 squad leaders with them. Our 10 men wouldn't even be a snack for their wolves. The old soldiers closed their eyes. Infantry caught in open snow against mounted raiders. We couldn't even run, let alone fight. But while everyone was making peace with death, I stood up. Wang, are you insane? Get down. Old Hay grabbed for my pants leg and missed. I brushed the snow off my thighs, calm as could be, and stared through the storm at those 20-odd riders. What I saw wasn't danger. I saw a fully catered banquet. 2 squad leaders at 10 points each. 20 elite soldiers. Quick math, 40 merit points walking straight toward me, plus several hundred points of archery experience. I'd been wondering where to get more merit to trade for my next batch of pills. And here came a delivery, right to my doorstep. Old Hay, keep the boys in the tree line. Stay low, don't move. I unwrapped my bow and locked the cold steel grip in my hand. My voice was as casual as if I were asking someone to pick up groceries. These poor bastards are mine. When I'm done, come out and help me collect arrows and ears. Old Hay opened his mouth to curse at me, then stopped. He remembered. The wall. 18 enemy officers in half an hour. The monster sniper. Right. We've got a freak on our team. I stepped out of the tree line. Not charging in blind. I used the wind, snow, and tree trunks for cover, moving fast to a rocky high point with clear sight lines and no easy path for wolves to charge up. The barbarians were less than 150 paces out now. The lead squad leader was sniffing the air, smelling humans, raising his spiked mace to signal a charge. Wind from the northwest. Speed, level 3, my feet locked onto the rock like iron bolts. Perfect two principles stance. I drew a name arrow from my quiver, knocked it, and pulled the 300-pound bow to full moon without effort. 2 weeks of daily practice, shooting rats at the dump, picking off crows in flight, had pushed my archery past 4,000 experience points. Almost at the next breakthrough, I released. Silent shot activated. In the howling wind and snow, the arrow made zero sound. A black streak through the white void. The barbarian squad leader had his cruel grin frozen on his face. He never saw what hit him. The armor-piercing arrow punched through his iron helmet at the brow, exited through the back of his skull, and blew him off his wolf into the snow like a ragdoll. Enemy officer killed. Archery experience 20. Current progress. Beginner mastery, 4650/5000. Killing rats gave me 2 points. Killing an elite like this? 10 times that. Plus the merit points. Attack. Sniper. Find him, the second squad leader screamed. But in this blizzard, with my silent shot killing any sound, they had no idea where I was. My hands became a blur. Draw, knock, full moon, release. A factory production line of death. One barbarian raised a wooden shield. The arrow went through the shield and through his chest, pinning them together. Another tried to flee on his wolf. I put an arrow through the wolf's eye. The beast crashed and hurled its rider into the snow, snapping his neck. Enemy elite killed. Experience 15. Enemy elite killed. Experience 15. Golden light strobed in my mind like fireworks. In less time than it takes to burn a stick of incense, 11 bodies and 3 dead wolves lay scattered across the red-stained snow. Every corpse had a single arrow buried in something vital. 1 shot, 1 kill. No screaming, no struggling. The surviving 7 or 8 raiders broke completely. They couldn't see me, couldn't hear my bow. Their friends just kept dropping dead, one by one, like an invisible reaper was walking among them. Devil, that's not a man. It's a demon in the storm. They wheeled their wolves and fled north, running for their lives. I let them go. Don't chase a cornered enemy, old hunters rule. And besides, 2 legs can't catch 4 in deep snow. 11 fat sheep. I'm satisfied. I checked my progress bar, beginner mastery, for 1,835 out of 5,000. Full mastery was right around the corner. I jumped down from the rocks and walked to the battlefield. Started pulling arrows from bodies and cutting left ears with practiced efficiency. Back in the tree line, Old Hay and the others were staring with their mouths hanging open. A fight that should have been our massacre, flipped completely by 1 man and 1 bow in the time it takes to finish a cup of tea. What are you gawking at? Get over here and help. I yanked an arrow from a barbarian's neck, flicking the blood off, and waved my ear-cutting knife at them. Old Hay, their armor is crude, but we can strip it and sell it back at camp for drinking money. And those wolf pelts are top-grade cold weather gear. Move fast before the snow buries everything. That snapped them out of it. They scrambled out of the pines and started looting the battlefield, hands shaking, not from cold this time, but from sheer disbelief. The looks they gave me were beyond respect. It was all. Patrolling with a man who treats barbarian raiders like walking piggy banks? Their ancestors must be smiling down on them from wherever they're buried. We came back through the gates of Juma Pass covered in snow, but Old Hay was strutting like a rooster. He marched straight to the merit checkpoint and slammed our loot bag on the desk. 11 frozen left ears and a pile of stripped barbarian weapons spilled across the table. The clerk nearly jumped out of his seat. 11 Bloodwolf Guard elites? Your little patrol squad hit a wolf pack and survived? Survived? Please. Old Hay jabbed his thumb over his shoulder at me. Our brother Wang took every single one of them. By himself. The clerk looked over at me leaning against a fence post, casually brushing snow off my bow, not even paying attention. He swallowed hard and started writing fast. He knew exactly who I was, the one-eyed officer's prized killer. 2 squad leaders, 9 elite soldiers. 38 merit points, logged under Wang Qing, Marksman Battalion. Old Hay even went and sold the scavenged armor scraps at the supply depot, brought back 2 taels of silver, and pressed it into my hands like a loyal dog bringing its master a bone. I tossed 1 tael back to him for the boys to buy liquor, then borrowed a merit token and headed straight for the arsenal. The supply officer saw me coming and lit up like I was his favorite customer. which I was. Same as always, I said, slapping the token down. 38 points. All tiger bone pills. Whatever's left over, give me dried meat. The man's mouth twitched. He'd seen a lot of soldiers come through, but none like me. Normal guys save their merit for promotions or good weapons. I dumped every last point into pills that could kill or cripple you if you took too many. Eating them like candy. 3 jars. 15 pills. 8 pounds of dried deer meat. I stuffed it all in my coat and walked back into the snow. Then the heavy winter set in. The mountains sealed up under deep snow. The big barbarian army pulled back into the frozen plains, too cold even for them. Except for the occasional raider group poking around, the fighting stopped. The camp went into hibernation mode. Old soldiers huddled around fire pits, gambling with dice and telling stories. Lazy, boring days. Not for me. No battles meant no human targets for archery experience. But I wasn't about to sit idle. Every morning at dawn, I strapped on my bow and headed into the mountains behind camp. In knee-deep snow, my perfected two-principle stance kept me moving smooth and steady while other men would have been floundering. I hunted everything that moved. Snow rabbits, wild pheasants, the occasional lone wolf that came sniffing for easy meat. 1 arrow, 1 or 2 experience points. Pathetic compared to shooting barbarian officers. But I'm a grinding machine without feelings. I walked 30-plus miles a day through the snow, flushing animals from their hiding spots and picking them off one by one. Every evening, I came back with a belt full of bloody game. The boys in the marksman battalion ate better than anyone in camp that winter, and my archery skill crept steadily upward, point by point. Nights belonged to the Iron Rhino. In the dark corner of the tent, shirtless, I'd swallow a tiger bone pill and feel the volcanic heat explode through my body. Then I'd twist into those brutal postures and drive the energy into my tendons like a battering ram. The sound of tendons tearing and reforming, mixed with my heavy, controlled breathing, echoed through the tent every single night. Even after a month of this, Old Hay and the others still pulled their blankets over their heads when they woke up to those noises. They never got used to it. I wasn't a new recruit anymore. I was a beast that tore itself apart and rebuilt itself every night. The veterans didn't just respect me. They were almost superstitious about me. They started bringing me wash water, cleaning my blood-soaked clothes, volunteering as my personal support crew. They figured if they took care of the war god would keep them alive through winter. This went on for a full month. Hunt by day, destroy and rebuild by night. Then, one deep winter night, with the wind screaming outside and snow battering the tent walls, I swallowed my very last tiger bone pill. The blood energy inside me surged to a point it had never reached before. My skin flushed dark red. Sweat evaporated off my body the instant it appeared, wrapping me in white mist. 10 more points. Just 10. I clenched my jaw until the veins on my forehead looked ready to burst. I pushed the Iron Rhino method to its absolute limit, channeling every drop of the pill's savage energy into one final, massive strike against the last major tendon in my back that hadn't fully transformed. Boom. Something inside me snapped, and then fused back together, like a steel wire being ripped in half and instantly welded with molten iron. The pain twisted my face into a mask, but I swallowed the scream and held it down through sheer willpower. At the peak of that agony, golden light flooded my mind. Iron Rhino mountain crushing method breakthrough. Beginner mastery complete. Advanced 2. Intermediate mastery. January 5000. Lifespan 6 years. Maximum lifespan 114. The pain drained away like a receding tide. What replaced it was a feeling of power so deep it shook my soul. Every major tendon in my body had undergone a fundamental transformation. They weren't soft tissue anymore. They felt like tightly strung oxhorn bows, taut, dense, explosive. I shifted slightly. A deep, resonant tchrum rolled through my body, like someone had plucked a massive bowstring or struck a war drum inside my chest. Tendon resonance. The signature sign of Iron Rhino intermediate mastery. I took a cold breath and slowly clenched both fists. No cracking of knuckles this time. Instead, the great tendons in my arms contracted, and a wave of raw, devastating power surged through them like a charging rhinoceros. A month ago, pulling my 300-pound bow to full draw required dumping all my blood energy into a single explosive effort. Now, With just the elastic snap of my arm tendons alone, I could pull that bow to full moon casually and fire 10 arrows in a row without feeling sore. 114 years old. That number glowing in my mind brought a deep, genuine smile to my sweat-soaked face. In a world where you can freeze, starve, or get chopped down any day, every year added to that counter is worth more than all the gold in the empire. I pulled on a shirt and stepped outside into the snow. Near the tent, thick ironwood posts were driven into the ground for tying horses. Frozen solid in this cold, harder than stone. I walked up to one. No wind-up, no stance, no dramatic pose. I just reached out, hooked my fingers around the edge, and twisted my wrist inward. Crack! A sharp, splintering sound cut through the silent night. I'd crushed and snapped off a chunk of frozen ironwood with one hand. The wood splinters jabbed into my palm, but couldn't break my peak skin-tempering skin. They shattered against it instead. Now that's what mountain-crushing force feels like. I dusted off my hands. This technique had earned its price and its pain. With tendons like rhino horn, a punch from me wouldn't just break a few ribs anymore. It would turn a man into pulp. I stood in the snow, breathing out steam, letting snowflakes melt on my burning face. Then, just as I turned to go back to sleep, my newly sharpened hearing caught something. A faint rhythm from deep in the northern plains. Through the howling wind and snow, barely there, but unmistakable. Thud, thud, thud. I dropped flat into the snow and pressed my ear to the frozen ground. Now I heard it clearly. Not wind, not some giant animal. That was the sound of thousands, tens of thousands, of iron-armored wolves stampeding across frozen earth. And beneath it, growing louder, the bone-shaking pulse of war drums and the mournful cry of bullhorn war trumpets. Spent a month hiding from the cold. Now the starving wolves are finally coming to gnaw on Juma Pass. I stood up and brushed the snow off my clothes. Looked north into the blackness. No fear, just the excitement of seeing a massive shipment of premium experience points charging straight toward me. Tomorrow was going to be a very profitable day. 3 blasts of the war horn ripped through the night. The alarm gongs on the walls went crazy. The barbarians were here. Inside our tent, Old Hay and the boys jolted awake in a panic, fumbling for their armor in the dark. Then Old Hay noticed my bed was empty. The tent flap flew open. I walked in fully dressed, both quivers loaded, bow in hand, snow dusting my shoulders. Up? Good. Grab your gear. I couldn't stop grinning. Customers are here. Show up late, and there won't be any left. Old Hay and Zhao Threehide stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Customers? There were tens of thousands of starving barbarians outside. We hit the wall fast. The smell of fire, oil, and blood slammed into me the moment I climbed up. Down below, the snow plains were black with enemy soldiers, and this time, no slave cannon fodder out front. These were all armored elites pushing siege ladders. Several iron-plated rhinos were battering the gates with earth-shaking booms. Archers suppressed the base of the wall. Now, the one-eyed officer was screaming himself hoarse on the rampart, cracking his bloody whip. Old Hay found a spot behind a merlin with a firing slit and got ready for blind arcing shots. Standard safe procedure. I walked right past him. I stepped up onto the edge of the wall, 1 foot on the battlement, half my body leaning out over the drop, looking straight down at the swarming enemy below. Wang, the arrows. Get behind cover. Old Hay nearly had a heart attack. I'm fine. Higher up means better view. My eyes swept the battlefield like a scanner searching for premium targets. Regular foot soldiers? Not worth the arrow. But there, a squad leader in beast-hide armor, holding a shield, shouting orders at the men climbing ladders. 10 merit points. And over there, a chief banner officer on a war wolf, his chain armor catching firelight. 20 points. My left hand locked around the bow grip. My legs sank slightly. Inside my body, the newly forged great tendons of the iron rhino method tightened like coiled springs. A deep THRUM resonated under my skin, the tendon resonance. The 300-pound bow bent into a perfect full moon. No strain, no shaking. After reaching intermediate mastery, pulling this bow felt like stretching a rubber band. The explosive elastic power of my transformed tendons did all the work, barely touching my stamina. Silent shot activated. The arrow vanished into the snow and wind without a sound. 50 paces below, that squad leader's iron shield exploded. The heavy arrow punched through the shield, through his neck, and the impact flung his corpse backward into two of his own men, sending all three tumbling. Enemy officer killed. Archery experience 10. Current progress. Beginner mastery 4, 845/5000. That's the stuff. My right hand became a blur over the quiver. Draw, knock, full moon, release. Draw, knock, full moon, release. Arrow after arrow, each one stamped with my name. Each one hunting down the loudest, best armored barbarian officers on the field. The chief banner officer on the wolf took one through the skull. Dead before he hit the snow. A veteran warrior tried to block with his saber. The arrow punched through the blade and buried itself in his chest, launching him backward. With my new tendons doing the heavy lifting, each shot cost almost nothing. I was a factory assembly line. No emotion, just production. Half an incense stick later, my hand reached for the quiver and grabbed air. Both quivers. 60 arrows. All gone. Old hey. Old Zhao. I shouted without turning around. I'm out. Pass me arrows. They scrambled over, unbuckling their own quivers, shoving them into my hands. Brother Wang, you're shooting too fast. Zhao Three-Hide gaped at the chaos below. An entire section of the barbarian assault had collapsed because every junior officer was lying dead in the snow. Even Ping doesn't come out this fast. Stop talking and carve my name on these. I grabbed the fresh arrows and complained. This name arrow rule is killing my efficiency. I can shoot faster than anyone can carve. The one-eyed officer appeared behind me. He'd noticed something strange. The section of wall I was defending had gone eerily quiet below. The barbarian attack had just stalled. Their officers were lying in heaps, every one of them bristling with heavy arrows. He looked at the two empty quivers at my feet. His single eye went wide. You shot both quivers dry. He knew my bow was 300 pounds. Elite marksman burn out after 10 consecutive shots with a heavy bow. Arms too sore to lift. I'd fired 60 in half an incense stick and was standing here relaxed, asking for more like I'd barely warmed up. They're packed tight tonight, sir. Easy targets. I casually took a freshly carved arrow from Old Hay and pinned another torch-carrying officer to the ground below. The name carving is the bottleneck. If someone else carves it, the supply officer might not accept it and accuse me of faking kills. The one-eyed officer looked at the field of premium corpses below, then looked at me, rock steady, breathing easy, pulling the bow like it weighed nothing, and blood rushed to his face. This wasn't just a good soldier. This was a fortress-defending superweapon. Name arrows? Forget name arrows. Old Hay, stop carving. He kicked the knife out of Old Hay's hand and roared at the top of his lungs. Military regulations are dead. I'm alive. I'm the highest-ranking officer on this wall. He swept his arm across a 100-yard stretch of wall with me at the center. Tonight, this entire section is Wang Qing's personal kill zone. Every barbarian officer shot dead with a heavy arrow in this area, name or no name on the shaft, gets logged as Wang Qing's kill. I'll personally guarantee it with the supply office. My eyes lit up like searchlights. He'd just given me an official unlimited ammo, skip the checkout VIP pass. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Shoot. He spun around and screamed at the supply runners behind us. Are you blind? The sniper is out of arrows. Get to the supply depot. I want the best armor-piercing arrows loaded on carts and wheeled up here. Stack them at Wang Qing's feet. Tonight, even if Wang Qing shoots a hole through the sky, I will keep him supplied. Minutes later, wheelbarrows piled with gleaming new heavy arrows were pushed up to my platform. Mountains of ammunition at my feet. No more name-carving delays. No more ammo limits. I let myself go completely. I grabbed fistfuls of arrows. My tendons sang their war drum resonance. The bow became a blur. In front of this cold, tireless human siege engine, the 100 yards of wall below me became an absolute death zone for barbarian officers. They charged in screaming. They died silently, one arrow each, before they could take another step. And in my mind, the golden numbers climbed at a dizzying pace toward the breakthrough I'd been chasing for months. Enemy officer killed. Archery experience 10. Current progress. Beginner mastery 4, 915/5000. Current progress. Beginner mastery 4, 985/5000. Almost there. The siege ran from midnight straight through to the next evening. The sunset turned the snow and the carpet of corpses blood red. Defenders rotated in and out, exhausted. Even the supply troops dumping rocks and logs were collapsing in puddles of gore. But my 100-yard section of wall, it was a different world down there. Not a single siege ladder stayed upright. Not one battering ram got within 30 paces of the gate. Any barbarian who dared shout orders, wave a flag, or wear anything nicer than rags, 3 breaths. That's all they got before an arrow found them. The empty arrow containers at my feet had piled into a small mountain. The 2 supply runners assigned to keep me loaded were flat on their backs on the ramp, gasping like beached fish. Brother Wang, Grandpa Wang, please take a break. Even a landlord's ox doesn't work this hard. One of them looked near tears, staring at my right arm that apparently never got tired. You've almost single-handedly emptied the supply depot's best armor-piercing arrows. Quit whining and bring 2 more carts. I haven't hit my quota yet. I grabbed one of the last arrows from the half-empty container at my feet, knocked it smooth as water, and released. 100 paces out, a barbarian sharpshooter peeked out from behind a pile of corpses to take a shot at us. My silent arrow entered through his eye socket and blew the top of his skull clean off. Enemy elite killed. Archery experience 10. Current progress. Beginner mastery 4, 995/5000. 5 more points. Just 5. 1 more squad leader, and my archery breaks through to full mastery. I'd been chasing this moment for months. The silent shot ability at beginner mastery had already made me a ghost on the battlefield. What would full mastery unlock? I scanned the field hungrily for a high-value target. Then the barbarian ranks below split open like a parting sea. Heavy footsteps thundered through the snow, and out charged an enormous iron-armored snow wolf carrying a man built like a tower. No helmet, dirty braids, 2 full layers of heavy chain armor, and in his hands, not a mace, but 3 short throwing spears made of solid steel, each one thick as a child's arm. That's a barbarian centurion. Tendon-changing realm. The one-eyed officer spotted him instantly and drew his sword, screaming for me to fall back. Regular arrows can't break through a tendon-changing warrior's protective energy, a real tendon-changing realm fighter. Even at the lowest level of that realm, the thin layer of true energy coating their body could deflect ordinary weapons. The giant locked eyes with me from his wolf's back. He'd figured it out. This section of wall was impenetrable because of one silent archer up on the platform. Me. Xiaorat. Die. At 80 paces out, he half stood on the wolf's back. His entire body coiled backward like a drawn bow. Blood energy erupted around him in a visible red mist. Boom. He hurled a steel spear with the full force of a tendon-changing body. The air screamed as it tore through the blizzard. A black bolt of lightning aimed straight at my face. This thing could punch through a brick wall half a foot thick. Wang. Dodge. Old Hay screamed. I didn't dodge. Leaving my platform meant losing my sight lines and breaking my rhythm. I wasn't giving that up. Tendon-changing realm? Perfect timing. My legs locked into the stone. My newly forged great tendons fired. That deep war drum, TRUM, rolled through my body. I poured every ounce of iron rhino power into my arms and wrenched the bow past full moon, past its limit. The bow frame groaned. I drew an arrow in the same motion and knocked it. Did I aim at the incoming spear? No. My sights went past the spear, locking onto the giant's exposed throat, wide open because he'd put everything into that throw and couldn't pull back in time. Trade life for life. My kind of bet. I released. The silent arrow streaked outward, passing the incoming spear in midair like 2 ships in the night. In the same instant, I threw my body backward at an impossible angle, full loach technique flexibility, and the steel spear screamed past my nose by inches. It smashed the battlement behind me into rubble, showering me with broken brick. Down below, the barbarian centurion was still frozen in his throwing pose, muscles committed forward, unable to guard his throat. A soft, heavy thud. My arrow sliced through the thin protective energy at his neck. He was only barely into the tendon-changing realm, and that weak shield couldn't stop. 300 pounds of force at point-blank trajectory. The arrow shattered his iron gorget, punched through his throat, and burst out the back of his neck in a spray of blood. He made a hissing, leaking sound. His massive body swayed twice on the wolf's back, then crashed into the snow. Blood spread across the white ground like spilled paint. Killed enemy tendon-changing realm commander. Strength feedback. Archery experience 50. Current progress. Beginner mastery 5045/5000. Breakthrough. Golden light erupted in my mind like a sunrise. Basic archery advanced 2. Full mastery. Current progress. Full mastery 45/10,000. Lifespan 3 years. Maximum lifespan 117 years. But what really made my heart pound was the dark gold text that appeared below. Martial art advanced. New absolute trait unlocked. Basic archery, full mastery. Unlocked. Spiral penetration. Spiral penetration, building upon silent shot, imparts an extremely high-frequency spiral force to the arrow upon release. Armor penetration doubled. Upon entering a living target, the spiral energy creates a massive cavitation explosion effect. Spiral penetration. Cavitation explosion. My breathing went ragged. In my past life, I'd been a military enthusiast. I knew exactly what cavitation effect meant in ballistics. Before this, my heavy arrows were like solid armor-piercing rounds. They punched clean holes through people. Devastating, but simple. Now, with high-speed spiral force added, these arrows had just become the ancient equivalent of expanding hollow point rounds. Once the arrow drills into flesh, the rotating energy churns the insides into soup and blows out an exit wound bigger than a dinner plate. This is insane. They basically gave me a heavy anti-material sniper rifle. I had to test it immediately. Below the wall, 4 or 5 barbarian heavy shield troops had surrounded their dead centurion. They held tower shields, half a man tall, 2 inches of solid iron, strong enough to stop a close-range crossbow bolt, trying to drag the body back to their lines. Iron turtle formation against me. I drew one more arrow. This time, I didn't rush. I let the new muscle memory settle into my fingers. Tendons hummed. Bow at full moon. At the instant of release, my thumb and forefinger did something new, a tiny, impossibly fast twist on the bowstring that I couldn't have done before. The sound changed. Instead of silence, a low, skin-crawling buzz filled the air, like 1,000 wasps beating their wings at once. The black arrow launched spinning, visibly spinning. The snowflakes around it were sucked into a tiny tornado trailing the shaft. Below, a heavy shield soldier heard the strange buzzing. Before he could react, clang. An ear-splitting crash. That 2-inch iron tower shield, built to stop siege crossbow bolts, crumpled like tinfoil. The spinning steel arrowhead drilled straight through it. Then the arrow hit his chest. The spiral penetration detonated inside his body. Thump. A sickening, wet explosion. His entire back, along with the chain armor covering it, blew outward in a hole the size of a wash basin. Shredded meat, organs, and shattered armor fragments sprayed out behind him in a fan pattern, drenching the soldiers trying to drag the centurion's corpse. He didn't even scream. Nearly a third of his upper body was just gone. He folded and dropped. Silence. Complete, horrified silence across the entire section of wall. Our soldiers, their soldiers, everyone froze. They'd all just watched a single arrow do something that shouldn't be possible. Old Hayesbow slipped from his fingers and landed on his foot. He stared at the basin-sized exit wound, then slowly turned to look at me, standing expressionless on my platform. That came from a bow. Did someone drag a siege cannon up here and crank it by hand? The one-eyed officer shuddered. He touched his own face, feeling suddenly very mortal. A weapon that turns people into mist, in the hands of a shooter who never misses and never makes a sound. What commander in any army would dare show his face on a battlefield against that? The remaining shield soldiers broke. They stared at what was left of their comrade, dropped their shields, abandoned their general's body, and ran screaming. The retreat horns finally sounded. A full day of assault, massive casualties, multiple officers dead, including a tendon-changing centurion. Their army's morale was shattered. The black tide pulled back, leaving nothing but carnage under the walls of Juma Pass. I let go of the bow and looked down at my hands. After a whole day of non-stop shooting plus that final spiral penetration shot, even my peaked skin-tempering fingers, tough as old leather, had 2 deep red grooves cut into them by the bowstring, almost breaking the skin. New ability hits like a truck, but it's rough on the hands. Going to need a steel thumb ring. I unstrung my bow, wrapped it up, and muttered to myself while the whole wall stared at me in stunned silence. That night, the marksman battalion had the biggest bonfire and the fattest roast lamb in the whole camp. We'd helped break the siege, and everyone was celebrating. When the accounting officer came to read out my score, his hands were shaking. Wang Qing, 21 enemy squad leaders killed. For chief banner officers, +1 tendon-changing realm centurion taken down at 100 paces. Total military merit, 340 points. Highest score in the entire garrison, 340. The old soldiers dropped their lamb legs into the ashes. A regular shield soldier might scrape together 50 points in an entire career. I'd earn more in one day than a whole infantry battalion could manage in a decade. Old Hay brought me a bowl of the strongest liquor we had, hands practically trembling with excitement. I took it and drank. In my head, I was already spending 20 jars of tiger bone pills, plus another high-grade technique manual as fusion fuel. Beautiful. The one-eyed officer was grinning, so wide his scar looked ready to split open. He was about to make a speech when bang. Someone kicked open the camp fence. A commander in bright armor and a black cape stormed in with a squad of bodyguards. Vice Giliarch Ma, about 30 years old, cold face, armor still caked with blood from the front lines. His unit had been chewed up badly today. Most of his personal guard had been hacked to pieces. You're the new recruit who killed the barbarian centurion? Wang Qing. He looked me up and down like he was inspecting livestock. My vanguard battalion lost a lot of men today. My bodyguard squad is empty. Starting now, you're transferred. Pack your bow and come with me. You'll be my personal guard captain. Stick with me, and in 3 years you'll be wearing a centurion's armor. Everyone's face changed. The one-eyed officer stepped in front of me immediately. Vice Giliarch Ma, you can't just walk in here and steal my top performer. Did you ask my permission? Your permission? Ma sneered and tapped his rank badge. I outrank you. Wartime authority to reassign elites to the vanguard. Want to refuse an order? Personal guard captain. Sounds impressive. In reality, it means human shield. Your commander charges, you block blades for him. He retreats, you cover his back. Death rate 10 times higher than a regular soldier. Ma wanted me as his personal survival tool on the battlefield. My shooting skill as his insurance policy. But leave the marksman battalion, where I'm safe in the rear, racking up merit points and experience like a factory, to go be some officer's meat shield? I'd have to be brain dead. I refuse. Everyone froze. Ma's eyes went wide. A common soldier refusing a superior officer to his face? I'm an archer, I said, looking straight at him. My hands are built to take enemy commanders' heads from 100 paces. You want me in the vanguard holding a shield and catching swords for you? No. I don't put my life in other people's hands, and I don't spend my life buying someone else's career. Insolent. Ma ripped his sword half out of its scabbard. A common soldier daring to defy military orders? You think killing one centurion makes you untouchable? The one-eyed officer drew his blade too. Things were about to explode. I reached over and gently pushed the officer's sword down. Fighting this head-on would only get him charged with mutiny. Ma outranked him. But I knew the military code better than Ma expected. Vice Giliarch Ma, I said, voice cold as the wind outside. Great Siam Military Code, Article 7. If a soldier refuses a transfer order from a non-direct superior, they may accept the punishment cudgel to void the order. 30 strikes. Survive, and the transfer is cancelled. Would you prefer to break military law by executing a decorated soldier without due process? Ma's eyes narrowed. He couldn't kill me outright. Not after I'd just earned the highest merit in the garrison. That would spark a mutiny. But the punishment cudgel wasn't a slap on the wrist. It's an iron-hard, tung-oil-soaked wooden rod, swung full force by 2 big military police officers. Most skin-tempering warriors break bones and rupture organs after 10 strikes. 30? Even a tendon-changing fighter would be seriously hurt. The rule existed precisely to make refusal basically suicidal. Nobody was supposed to actually survive it. Fine, Ma laughed with rage. You want to get beaten? I'll oblige. Bring the punishment rods. I'll supervise personally. Let's see if your bones are as hard as your mouth. 2 huge military police officers arrived carrying thick black ironwood cudgels. Old Hay went white. Brother Wang, don't do this. One hit from those things can shatter your organs. The one-eyed officer tried to talk me down. I'll go over his head tomorrow. Don't bother, sir. I pulled off my shirt and tossed it to Old Hay. Bare from the waist up, dark bronze skin with that blue metallic sheen. Not an ounce of fat, muscles carved like iron. Consider it a warm-up. I walked to the clearing by the fire. Didn't lie down. Didn't kneel. I sank into a perfect two-principle stance, arms crossed over my chest, and stared at the two men holding the rods. Go ahead. Don't hold back. Hit him, Ma screamed. The first rod whistled through the air and slammed into my back. Thud. Old Hay shut his eyes. But there was no crack of breaking bone. I barely shifted. The moment the ironwood connected, my iron rhino tendons fired. Every great tendon in my back snapped taut like steel cables, absorbing the killing force and bouncing it straight back up the rod. The rod tore my surface skin and left a red welt. That was it. Underneath, my tendons held like rhino horn. The shock wave that should have pulped my organs was swallowed whole and reflected back. The officer who'd swung felt his hands go numb. The rod bounced so hard it nearly flew out of his grip. He stared at my back, bleeding on the surface, but the bone and muscle beneath were solid as cast iron. That all you've got? Swing harder. This surface pain? Compared to what I do to myself every night. Swallowing those brutal pills and deliberately ripping my own tendons apart for hours. This was nothing. It couldn't even reach my bones. Keep hitting. Ma was losing his mind. Thud, thud, thud. They went at me with everything they had. Both officers, alternating, full swings. The impacts echoed across the camp like war drums. My back split open in a crosshatch of bloody welts. Blood ran down my bronze skin in streams. It looked horrifying, but I didn't make a single sound. My spine stayed straighter with every hit, like a blood-soaked lion refusing to bend. Meanwhile, the two officers were drenched in sweat. Their hands had split open from the shock rebounding through the rods. Their own blood was running down the ironwood. Strike 20, 25, 30. Crack. On the final blow, the ironwood rod in the right officer's hands, that dense, oil-hardened weapon designed to break men, snapped clean in half from the accumulated rebound force. Silence. Only the pop and crackle of the bonfire. Ma stared at the broken rod on the ground. His face cycled through green and white. Deep in his eyes was something he couldn't hide anymore. Raw fear. 30 punishment cudgel strikes. They'd broken the rod itself. But this man, apart from surface cuts weeping blood, had zero internal damage. Bones intact. Organs untouched. Standing as steady as when he'd started. Vice Giliarch Ma. 30 strikes. Complete. I relaxed my stance and cracked my neck. The joints popped like firecrackers. I turned around, blood still dripping down my back, and gave him a cold, practical smile. By military regulation, your transfer order is void. You. Fine. You win. Ma knew he was done. Pushing further would only make him a laughingstock across the entire army. He ground his teeth, glared at me one last time, swept his cape, and marched out with his two officers, both of them cradling their wrecked hands. 3 seconds of silence after he left. Then the eruption. Yes, Brother Wang. That was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. Old Hay, Zhao Three-Hide, and every man in the marksman battalion exploded in cheers loud enough to blow the tent down. The way they looked at me had changed again. Not just a strong new recruit anymore. A war god. A guardian who'd let them stand tall and walk proud in this camp full of bullies. I walked to the fire. Didn't bother with a shirt. I took the bowl of strong liquor from Old Hay's hand and tipped it straight back. The burning alcohol hit my stomach, and the sting rippled through the torn skin on my back. I let myself wince, just barely, then felt the fire spread through my whole body. Now that hits the spot. Next morning at Juma Pass, the snow had stopped, but the air could freeze your breath solid. Old Hay was dabbing at my back with a wet cloth. 30 full-force hits from ironwood rods last night, and by morning the torn skin had already scabbed over into thick, dark crusts. The Iron Rhino Method's blood energy had done its work overnight. Brother Wang, what are you made of? If that were me, I'd be flat on a board moaning for half a month. You slept it off like nothing happened. Thick skin, I said, pulling on a sheepskin coat to cover the mess. Last night's show had done exactly what I needed. Ma wouldn't be coming back, and every man in the marksman battalion now understood exactly what they had in their corner. Worth every welt. I headed for the arsenal with the one-eyed officer leading the way. He'd done a complete flip since yesterday, practically bowing as he walked beside me. He'd watched me put an arrow through the throat of a barbarian centurion who was his equal in cultivation. That meant if I ever decided to turn on him, he'd be dead before he heard the bowstring. A man with that kind of killing power, who chose to stay in his unit even after taking 30 punishment strikes. He was treating me like a living ancestor now. At the arsenal, the supply officer greeted me like his best customer. I walked past the outer shelves and asked to see movement techniques. He led me to a jade box at the back. Treading snow without trace. Top-tier military movement art. At full mastery, you can run across snow without leaving footprints, cover 100 paces fast as lightning. Perfect for chasing down enemy commanders or escaping encirclement. My fingers itched. Then I saw the price tag. 500 merit points. I nearly choked. The Iron Rhino method, a full path to the tendon-changing realm, had cost only 150. The supply officer chuckled, clearly used to this reaction. Brother Wang, the Iron Rhino is a charging technique. Command wants you to learn it, so you'll smash into enemy formations like a battering ram. It's practically a subsidized recruitment tool. Cheap on purpose. He tapped the jade box. But movement arts? These are for running away, for surviving, for keeping yourself alive. In wartime, anything that saves your neck is the most expensive thing there is. Command doesn't want common soldiers who can outrun cavalry. 500 is actually the bargain price. I understood instantly. Techniques that make you a better weapon for the army are cheap. Techniques that help you survive are priced through the roof. Classic. I couldn't afford it yet, but I wasn't in a rush. 340 points was still a fortune, and I had priorities. I'll come back for the movement art later. For now, 5 jars of tiger bone pills and 20 pounds of unicorn rhino dried meat. 50 points for the pills, 20 for the meat. 70 total. The officer logged it and handed everything over. I walked back to camp with arms full of premium supplies. The next few days were paradise. No frontline duty. I spent my days eating high-grade beast meat by the pound, and every night I ground through the Iron Rhino method with tiger bone pills fueling each session. With this kind of resource supply, my progress bar climbed like crazy. Iron Rhino mountain crushing method. Current progress. Intermediate mastery. 855 000. Every day my tendons grew thicker and harder. A casual punch now made a low sonic boom in the air. But I'm a planner by nature. I watched my pill supply shrink and did the math. Right now I was building foundations, manageable consumption. Once the Iron Rhino hit full mastery, and I started pushing toward the actual tendon-changing breakthrough, the resource burn would double or triple. 1 pill a day wouldn't cut it anymore. And that treading snow technique was still sitting in the arsenal, waiting for me to come back with 500 points. Need more merit. Need more money. Can't relax until the warehouse is full. The opportunity came sooner than expected. A few mornings later, the camp went dead quiet. No drills, no noise. Every officer above centurion rank was called to the command tent. The veterans sat around silently cleaning their weapons, faces dark. What happened? I asked old Hay. His eyes were hollow. Urgent report from the scouts. The barbarians left their elite white wolf guard behind after the main army pulled back. They've circled around and cut our rear supply road. Worse, they built a hidden grain depot out in the snow. If we don't destroy it before the mountains seal shut completely, everyone in Juma Pass starves to death. Half an hour later, the one-eyed officer came back looking 10 years older. The Chili Arch has ordered a 50-man suicide squad. Tonight, under cover of the blizzard, infiltrate behind enemy lines and burn that grain depot to the ground. This is a one-way trip. Deep behind enemy lines, no backup. If you're spotted, the White Wolf Guard will cut you to pieces. But the reward is real. He held up one finger. Light that fire. Even if you don't make it back, your family gets 1,000 taels of silver. Make it back alive? 500 merit points per man. Instant promotion to Chief Banner Officer. 500 points. The number echoed through the tent. But nobody cheered. Dead men don't spend merit points. The old soldiers all dropped their eyes, avoiding the officer's gaze. Silence. Then, from my corner, count me in. Every head snapped toward me. I was already slinging my steel bow across my back and filling my quiver to the brim with heavy arrows. I looked at the one-eyed officer with calm eyes. No tragic heroism, no death wish drama. Just the sharp gleam of a hungry wolf spotting a feast. Brother Wang, are you crazy? Old Hay grabbed my arm. You've got more merit than you can spend. Why volunteer for a suicide mission? Suicide? I smiled, the kind of smile that made old Hay's skin crawl. 500 points would buy that movement technique outright. And for someone like me, who can't sleep at night unless his stockpile is overflowing, leaving that kind of money on the table was worse than dying. Old Hay, you don't get it. I patted his hand and walked toward the officer. That's not a barbarian camp out there in the snow. That's 500 free merit points and a field full of walking experience. Waving me over, night fell and the blizzard went wild. Snow chunks the size of walnuts smashed into our faces. Half the torches on the walls of Juma Pass had blown out. 50 of us gathered at the side gate. The suicide squad, wrapped in ragged sheepskins, carrying clay jars packed with fire oil. Everyone shaking, and not just from the cold. No officers came to see us off. No inspiring speeches. This was a body-for-body trade. Sneak behind enemy lines, burn their grain depot, and probably die doing it. Our squad leader was a tough bastard named Taitu, Ironhead he, a disgraced officer trying to earn his rank back by volunteering for the impossible. He poured cheap liquor into cracked bowls and passed them around. Drink up, brothers. His voice was raw in the wind. He drained his bowl and smashed it in the snow. Move out. 50 bowls shattered. We started trudging through knee-deep snow. Taitu kept glancing back at me. Everyone else looked like walking corpses, gray faces, heavy feet. Me? I was strolling along steady as ever, chewing on a strip of premium dried meat from my stash, enjoying the scenery. He'd been warned about me by the one-eyed officer, the freak who one-shots armored centurions, who took 30 punishment strikes for fun, who scared off a vice giliarch. He couldn't figure out why someone with my record and my stockpile of merit points would volunteer for a suicide mission. I kept chewing my meat and walking. 2 hours and 30 miles later, we crawled over a steep snowy ridge and dropped flat into the snow. Below us was a huge sheltered valley. Through the blowing snow, I could make out rows and rows of tents and massive piles of grain and supplies. The Northern Barbarians' hidden rear base, built by their elite White Wolf Guard to starve Juma Pass into surrender. Taitu's face went whiter than the snow. This isn't what the intel said. An old soldier beside him was whispering through chattering teeth. They told us a few dozen guards. Look at those tents. That's a 1,000-man garrison at least. All White Wolf Guard elites. Worse, the only path into the valley had 3 hidden sentry posts. Each one had 2 iron-armored snow wolves, huge as young bulls. Those wolves could smell a human through a blizzard at 50 paces. Get that close and the alarm goes up. Then 1,000 elite warriors pour out, and we're dead before we can light a single fire. It's over. This is a dead end. Taitu gripped his sword, already calculating which men to sacrifice as decoys to draw the wolves away. That's when I tapped his shoulder. He nearly jumped out of his skin and almost took my head off with his blade. I'd slid up next to him silent as a lizard. Loach technique habits die hard. I swallowed my last bite of meat and looked down at the 3 sentry posts. Commander, don't throw lives away yet. Getting here through this snow cost too much to waste men on a frontal push. Those are White Wolf Guard sentries. With snow wolves. One sound and we're all dead. What can you do? Kill everything that breathes. Then the road opens itself. I unwrapped my bow. The black steel gleamed cold in the dark. I pulled 3 name arrows from my quiver. In this blizzard, I can barely see shadows. How can you hit anything? Taitu was sweating despite the freezing air. Miss one shot and the wolves howl. Just watch. I gripped the bow. My arm muscles coiled. The great tendons of the iron rhino fired with a deep TCHRUM. 300 pounds pulled to full moon. Release. Silent shot. Spiral penetration. No bowstring sound. Just that terrifying low buzz, like 1,000 wasps taking flight at once. The spinning arrow tore through the curtain of snow and wind, carving a tiny tornado in its wake. 100 paces down, a White Wolf Guard sentry was scanning the darkness, one hand on his wolf's chain. He felt something cold touch his forehead. That was the last thing he felt. Crack. His upper skull exploded like a melon hit by a sledgehammer, the spiral penetration's cavitation effect detonating inside his brain. Bone fragments and gray matter sprayed into the snow. His headless body dropped without a sound. The massive wolf next to him caught a faceful of warm blood. It opened its jaws to howl the alarm. My second arrow was already in the air. I timed it to the exact moment the wolf's mouth opened wide. The arrow flew straight down its throat, shredded its vocal cords, followed the spine downward, and pinned the beast to the frozen ground. No howl, no alarm. Draw, knock, full moon, release. Draw, knock, full moon, release. I worked through all 3 sentry posts like a machine. No emotion, no hesitation. 10 breaths. That's all it took. When he Taitu and the other 48 men finally unfroze, every sentry and every wolf at all 3 posts was lying in the snow, most of them missing significant portions of their heads. Clean, silent, not a whisper of alarm from the main camp below. The squad lay in their snow holes, staring at each other with eyes the size of eggs. In a blinding blizzard, at 100 paces, silent headshots on humans and wolves alike, without missing once. He Taidu swallowed so hard I could hear it from 10 feet away. The entrance is clear, his voice was shaking. But there's still 1,000 White Wolf Guard elites in that camp. No blind spots, no cover. If 50 men carrying fire oil try to sneak in, one snapped twig and we're pincushions. We can't light anything. I lowered my bow and rubbed my wrist. Spiral penetration is powerful, but it takes a toll on the hands. You're right, Commander. 50 against 1,000 in a straight fight means we lose and the mission fails. I slung the bow back on my shoulder and looked at him. There's only one way to burn that grain and collect our 500 points. We make them open their own door. Open their own door? They're not stupid. I pulled my thick-backed cleaver and scratched a rough map in the snow. I go alone into the tree line around the camp perimeter. I start picking off their men with silent arrows, one by one, from different positions, never staying in one spot. In this blizzard, they won't find me. They won't even know where the shots are coming from. They'll think a large elite force is attacking the camp. Their commander will rage and send hundreds of men into the forest to hunt me down. That pulls the bulk of their fighters away from the grain depot. He Taitu almost leaped up. You're going to draw the aggro of 1,000 men by yourself? They'll surround you and you're dead. I'm a hunter. In a forest, in a snowstorm, they won't catch me. And if things go wrong, one man alone can always slip away. My voice was flat, like I was discussing tomorrow's weather rather than a plan that any sane person would call suicide. Once their main force is chasing me through the trees, the camp's defenses will have gaps. That's when you take the boys in and light everything on fire. One rule: nobody moves until you see the garrison get pulled away. Jump too early and we all die for nothing. I brushed the snow off my clothes, stood up, and walked away from the group. 50 pairs of eyes watched me disappear into the blizzard. One man, one bow, heading alone toward a camp of 1,000 elite warriors. Like a gray wolf melting into the storm. I slipped into the forest like smoke and left Hitayatu's squad behind in the snow. From this moment, half their lives depended on me making enough chaos to pull the White Wolf Guard away from the grain depot. But if I made too much noise and got myself trapped, I'd die too. Balance was everything. I buried myself in a snowbank on a slope overlooking the camp, just my eyes showing, and studied what I was dealing with. The grain depot sat in a sheltered valley, rows of beast skin tents surrounded by spiked barricades and frozen wooden stakes wrapped in iron thorns.